Welcome to Eternal Journey, the podcast.
What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Eternal Journey, the podcast that talks about all things eternal with a focus on limited play. I'm your host, Jedi, and this is episode 65 of the podcast, where we're going to be doing our very own constructed review of Shadows of the Spire, the latest campaign that was released by Direwolf Digital this week. Joining me on the line, as usual, is my good friend from Colorado, John. How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm good, Jedi. Got this exciting tournament this weekend for Expedition, another one next weekend for Throne. Did good in Eternal last month. You know, it's a new month on the leaderboards. Just feeling good. Otherwise, how you doing, Jedi?
I am doing fantastic, buddy. Dealing with some allergies as usual, but I'm sure the audience will power through it like we normally do. The other great, fantastic mind on the line is Alex. How you doing, buddy?
Doing a whole lot better now, guys. How's it going?
Glorious. All right.
Thanks.
But to do a little bit of housekeeping, you can catch all three of us live every Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday at twitch.tv/Jedi_EJ, where we do a lot of drafting, a little bit of constructing on some days, and some Scion drafting. So you're more than welcome to join us, ask questions, and tune in and have a good time. If you aren't able to catch us live, check us out offline, but still online, on YouTube. That's right, search Eternal Journey on YouTube, and you will find us where we have various draft videos, sealed videos, constructed tournament reports. All the good stuff is up there. I recently posted a video of myself and Alex going through an entire draft run, which was a lot of fun. You'll be catching one of myself and John Holio coming up later this week, so definitely check that out.
Sweet.
Going into our shoutouts, this is where we show some appreciation back to the great community that has taken care of us so much, and some of our bit leaders this week coming in with some huge bit donations. We have Chewbacca1, great guy, always in the Discord, always a positive light, swinging by on his lunch breaks, so happy to have him. Mercurial Blue, a fellow streamer. This is just all kinds of positivity both in Discord and in Twitch. Check out his channel. Of course, Mercurial Blue doing some serious bit donations as well as gifting a bunch of subs, so thank you so much, Mercurio. Then Dizzy Sick and Extinction coming with some awesome bit donations this week. Thank you guys so much for the ongoing support. I really appreciate it. And no new subs this week, but Chastity Weaver coming in with the 1-year resub streak, and Risper with the 9-month, recently getting promoted to Jedi Knight on stream. So thank you, Chastity Weaver and Risper Visper. And of course, an ongoing shout out and appreciation and thank you to all you great people and supporters of the channel out there. Really do appreciate it. I wish I could thank you guys every week, but then we would have a 20-minute intro, and I'm sure some people would not appreciate that. So I give shout outs when I can. Thank you guys one and all for all your ongoing support. It really does mean a lot to us here, and we really appreciate it. Okay, John, you ready for some pack one, pick one action, buddy?
Always.
All right. Cracking open a pack here, we have Precision Plunge. 1 time, slow spell, give one of your flying units deadly and killer. Token of Creation, this is the fire time Justice depleted power. Nesting Raven, 0/4 bird. For 1 primal, you may sacrifice Nesting Raven to play a 1/1 Raven with flying. Ensnare, kill an attacking enemy unit with flying at fast speed for 1 justice. Steely Stranger, the 1/3 stranger for 2 justice. When 1 or more strangers attack, the top unit of their owner's deck gets a random battle skill. Pause for Reflection, the 1-time fast spell, put a unit or relic with cost 3 or less into its owner's hand, you gain 3 life. Fighting Winds, still very high for the 3 of us. This is a 3 primal fast spell, deals 6 damage to an attacking enemy. This includes units and relic weapons. Blade Crafter, the 2/2 Oni for 4 fire. Summon, draw a weapon of your choice from the deck. Corrupted 6. John, what do you think of these comments?
I feel like you almost spoiled my pick here just a second ago. It's Binding Winds, right? Like out of all these commons, pretty straightforward Binding Winds here.
pretty straightforward for me as well.
Yep.
What
Easily
do you think,
splashable.
Jedi?
Easily splashable, solid removal. It hits, once again, relic weapons that could be quite relevant. It hits the Edge of Prophecy the first time you play it, and it takes out a Hook Sword without them getting an Oni. So yeah, easy one. But the uncommons are quite interesting here. So sending it over to you, Alex. We have Markmaker, the 3/2 Oni for 3 fire. Summon, play a +1 weapon with Overwhelm on one of your units. Corrupted 2. Touch of Battle, 2-time fast spell. Give one of your units deadly, then give a unit, weapon, or spell in your hand deadly. And then finally, Fear Tracker, the 5/4 elf for 5 Shadow. Summon, Fear Tracker deals 3 damage to an enemy player, and you gain 3 health. Corrupted 4. What are you on, Alex?
Out of the uncommons, Fear Tracker probably be my first pick, followed by the Mark Maker, and then Touch of Battle. The touch has gone down for me quite a bit, unless you do have some synergy with like damage spells, or like maybe smaller relics that you're giving deadly to, something like that. The Mark Maker is really good in an aggressive deck, and I don't dislike that card at all. It's just the Fear Tracker is good at like stabilizing the board, stabilizing your life total. The 2 swings sometimes of the life gain is just enough to like swing the game out of control for your opponent and into your favor. So I'm on Fear Tracker.
Nice. All right, John, before we send it over to you, I am going to go over our rare because this is a card you're quite familiar with. We have Akedonis Untainted. This is the 3/4 dragon for 4 Skycrag, fire primal, flying, mastery 3, increase the damage of a spell in your hand by 3. Mastery 12, create and draw 3 copies of a spell in your hand. Alright, so is Akedonis strong enough to win over this entire pack, John? And if so or not, please tell us why.
I think it is. That's a great stat line for a limited flyer, and with just 1 primal and 1 fire in the casting costs, I think it's like a reasonable ask in any deck with either, even as one, if one of those is a splash. I think you could even get some of the mastery payoffs going, but I think just as a 3/4 flyer, it's already basically good enough in any limited deck. So yeah, I think it is good enough for me.
Alex, are you on the same boat?
Yeah, I mean, it's relatively close with the Fear Tracker for me, but I think
It is close.
pack one, pick one. I'm not opposed to taking the 3/4 flyer, even though it is in 2 different factions. It's not too hard to get like 1 damage spell, buff it up and make it really OP, as the kids say, so I don't
I find it to be not that difficult and constructed to get that first mastery going, and so like in limited, like I imagine it to be even easier because it's mostly contesting with like 3/1 and like 1/2s and 1/3s and things like that. So it just outclasses all that first kind of realm of flyers. Like
yeah,
you got
like
to go to
the
the
big
next
concern
big
for me,
level.
yeah, is like just having the damage spell in your hand, to buff
Right.
basically after that first swing.
But if you get this nice and early in your draft, you can prioritize, make
Yeah,
sure that
absolutely.
some of your spells are damage spells.
I mean, it goes with the biting winds, kind of overkill potentially, but
Yeah.
it lets it kill a giant after that. Let's see. But
See,
yeah, I'm on Akedonis, however that dragon is said.
See, and I'm like on the other side of the fence from you guys. I actually think just much closer to what John said. I like the 3/4 flyer stat line on it more than the mastery triggers, because in the decks I've had it in, I've had maybe 1 seer or 1 ruinous blast, and so like chances of getting that mastery off with the spell in your hand is unlikely, and I don't want to adjust my game plan based on that. So
No,
I actually
I'd prioritize the fixing to play a card like this, but I wouldn't like warp my deck just to get cheeky with the mastery. I agree.
Yeah, so I think I actually there are only a handful of cards I would take Akedonis or over Akedonis, but I actually think here I might actually lean towards Fear Tracker, just because I feel like it's good all around.
Mm-hmm.
like, don't get me wrong, I like Agados. I don't know, I'm on the fence, but for me, honestly, I never pay attention to the mastery on that card, because I think out of all the times I've had it and played it, I think one time I was actually able to get it off on something, that relevant. Like, I think one time it even did go on to Biting Winds, and like, much like Alex said, now I can kill a giant, but I needed the perfect storm for that to happen.
Mhm.
Much like I think what Alex said, where even making, if you have any spell in your hand they make 3 copies of, that's pretty strong, because you're drawing essentially free cards. Heaven forbid they should be like a pump spell or removal spell, but overall, I mean, I could probably see
That's
just
like
taking
over.
Agados.
The mastery 12. If you're mastery 12ing Acidonis,
You're probably already winning anyways.
winning that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's kind of a little bit overkill on that end. But just
it's
a
fun
3/4
though.
flyer for 4 is just great in any limited deck.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're basing that on. But I don't fault you for the Fear Tracker. That's like a safer pick. So I could see
It
Jedi making
is.
that one.
Yeah, and I mean, plus staying like, I mean, but you guys had some solid ground as well. Like, it being only a single influence of both makes it very easy to splash in this format. The last couple
Mhm.
of drafts that we've all done together have been 4 and 5 colors, and we've seen some success there. So I don't think it's asking too much actually to make that happen. But all right, that's going to do it for our pack one pick one. So we get to go into our main topic, which once again, we will be discussing the Shadows of the Spire expansion that just came out this week. You were able to pre-order it and to have early access to 5 of the cards, which already started to see receive a decent amount of hype in ladder. But now we have access to all the cards, so we're going to do a bit of a constructed breakdown for you guys. I will say right off the bat, I'm going to spoil alert now if you want to just hear this and move on. I do think it's actually worth getting. I really do. Like, someone asked me in stream the other day if they thought it was worth getting, and I just went through the cards, and I was like, right off the bat, there was like maybe 4 or 5 cards that easily can make constructed, and we're already seeing them on ladder, not just brews. So I think it's a very solid campaign to pick up, which is nice, right? Normally, the last couple of campaigns as a whole, we've kind of been disappointed with the amount of playables in it.
I
And
mean, here's a hot take on my side there, right? Like the last one, we all kind of thought it was, mostly combo-y and just for fun and Johnny cards and things like that. And a lot of those were heavily featured in those in the last ECQ and top 64 decks, right? So, I mean, if our hot take on this set is very powerful, like pick up immediately. I, I wonder like if it's even more good than we think it is, or if we're just way off base. I don't know,
it could be.
right?
Yeah, it's hard to say, but
But no, I agree with you, Jedi. I would right now. Just came out this week. I also think its power level seems quite high, just across the board. So excited to talk about this with you guys here.
all right. Well, guys, without further ado, just one last reminder actually is that if you are not much of a listener and want to see the visual, you can catch this on YouTube, and I'll have all the cards we're going to be talking about on screen for you to enjoy with us. Okay, so starting off with Fire, we're gonna go. I'm in client, so I'm just gonna go down the order that they have it. You're more than welcome. I'm pretty sure Eternal Warcry goes off of the same order. So, starting off, we have one that's already making a huge splash. We have Jack Mercenary Hunter. This is the 2/3 gunslinger for 3 triple fire. When Jack hits the enemy player, create and draw a treasure trove. Summon. You may pay 1 and discard a card to deal 2 damage to 2 enemies. Jack gets double damage if it's a sigil. So a couple of things about this. A, it's anytime Jack hits the enemy player. So it could be with his summon ability, it could be himself, it could be with a weapon going on him, like for example, Caleb's Persuader. All those things will trigger you drawing the treasure trove. Next up, the summon effect, you do have to pay 1. So, for example, Jack costs 3, you will have to have 4 power active for this ability to happen. Now, you can discard any card, period, doesn't matter, and it will trigger the 2 damage to do different enemies. This can go to the enemy player, it could go to units. They don't count sites as enemies, correct? Or do they? I haven't.
Enemies are sites.
Okay, sweet. So
Or
there.
sites are enemies.
Okay.
Sorry, I said that backwards. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, they definitely count.
Okay, sweet. So there you go. I just haven't had confirmation about that, so I wanted to ask. Okay, cool. So that's that. And then finally the double damage is if it's sigil, it has to specifically be a sigil. So the 5 basic sigils. It won't count things like banners, seats, emblems, all those things they count as power, I think is what the nomenclature is for, or the type. Anyways, long story short, it has to specifically say sigil on it, which as far as I remember off the top of my head is just the 5 basic sigils. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, this card, I know you haven't played with it yet. Alex, have you played against it at all before John and I dive into it?
Yeah, no, I played again. It seems like everyone that's running Fire is just throwing this in their deck. So I've played against quite a bit of it just in my little bit of games that I do play. It doesn't seem like it should be in the decks that it's in. I think people are just trying it. This card screams like mono red to me, really.
Right.
Because you want to discard the sigil, which, and you want to do double damage, but someone got cheeky and gave it death touch and then killed 2 of my big dragons with, death touch. Is that, no, it's not even called death touch, sorry, but you know what I mean.
Deadly.
Yes.
Deadly, yes.
We do know what you mean.
It's a good card, but I don't think it goes into any deck that has fire. That's definitely for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. I know it's being splashed heavily in praxis, or not splashed, it's being put in praxis right now because of another card that we'll talk about in a moment. I actually like the heavy influence requirements they're doing, things like the Akari that we're going to talk about in a little bit. I think this I agree with you, it goes in the same kind of build where you're primarily one color and then you might have a light touch of another color to facilitate playing this thing on 4. Like, that is the trick to it, right? I just don't see a world where you play this on 3 and not activate the summon ability, because even if there's nothing on the board, like just doing 2 additional and getting a treasure or 4 to the opponent seems pretty strong as well. At least you're getting some value off it right off the bat. But a lot of times this is great in an aggressive deck because it's going to be able to clear out your opponent's blockers to get in additional damage. You did make a very good point because of the sigil thing. Like, granted, regardless, you could discard any card, it'll still do 2 and 2. But I do agree. I think you're really getting your value off of this when this guy's doing 4 and 4 and then gonna hit for 4 himself. Heaven forbid, once again, you should play a Caleb's Persuader on it and just go to town on your opponent's face. But yeah, and then it's cool because it will, the Persuader will like fuel the follow up Jex, So yeah, John, anything on this card?
Man, you guys said a lot about this guy already, and I agree with all of it. I think it's very powerful in any mostly or mono fire deck. Because yeah, like you've already talked about, like the limitation on the trigger is like the number of sigils that you're drawing. And as we all know, in multi-faction decks, you actually go down quite a bit on the number of sigils in your deck. So that is a real limitation, but the power level is very high for this 3-drop. So I expect to see even more, or like on par with the amount that Alex is seeing this week, in the coming weeks.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny because the playstyle that I've adapted with it already is I'm running the 4 Seek powers. But I actually end up playing my emblems and banners and everything I can first to sandbag the sigils for Jack. So that's a little interesting. We're seeing, and it's actually great curve wise because even though he's a 3-drop, once again you want to play him on 4, which means it still leaves the door open for you to play Milos on 3 and then go into Jack on 4, which is just such a beating. All right.
And this was one of the cards that you thought was constructed playable, right?
Yeah.
One of the 5.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, for sure. Yeah, definitely.
All right, that'll do it for Jack Mercenary Hunter. But staying with the heavy lore of this campaign, next up we have Jex Takedown. This is the 3 fire slow spell. Deal 3 damage to the enemy player or an enemy site. Should you have 4 fire influence, so another heavy influence requirement here, when the enemy player plays a spell, draw Jex Takedown from your void. All right, going to the Spellmaster himself, John, what do you think of Jex Takedown?
This one's kind of hard for me to evaluate. the 3 cost on it is definitely a limitation. But just getting this back for free, or maybe multiples back for free, like I see a lot of potential to do some busted things with this card. And I'm looking forward to brewing with this one myself for sure. I don't know that you're going to see a ton of it out on ladder or anything like that, but I don't know, maybe in markets in some decks, and then like this could definitely make its way into some kind of, in just some spell crag style decks, something like that. We'll see. Have to do some brewing.
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to ask you. The heavy fire requirements definitely make it to where you want to be primarily fire, because I mean, I can't imagine playing this and then your opponent playing a spell and not being able to get it back. That's got to feel pretty horrible. And then obviously, because of the fact that you get it back, you probably want to play it as soon as possible to throw it to have the highest chance of recurring it. Of note, it does only go face and sight, so it does not hit units, which, I mean, it makes sense, right? If you could recursively pull back a seer and keep hitting, or not a seer, but like a torch or whatnot, I guess like a conflagrate. No, those are all fast, whatever. Anywho, if you could get that back and keep pinging units, that's just absolutely backbreaking. But so do you want to see this in like a more mid-rangey control-y shell, or do you think aggro decks might play this? And if so, how many? Because for me, I could easily see an aggressive deck play like 2 of these, because like they're gonna try to use their removal to get your units, get rid of your units. So if you can go mono shot, mono fire, or maybe by turn 4 or 5 have your 4 influence, and this is in your bin, every time they kill one of your units, you could get 3 damage back for free, which isn't horrible. So
no, I agree.
I mean,
That's something I would like to try.
Yeah, like this card seems like it would be really good against like a very low creature control deck, because they got a bunch of spells. You could just keep bringing it back and going face, and like even if they counter it, you can get it back from your void when they cast their next spell. It seems pretty good to put in John's spell deck to play around with.
No, but I like what Jedi was saying too. Like I would like to try like a 2 of or something, just see how it goes, and just kind of heavy and fire aggressive deck, kind of maybe the same style deck you want Jack right next to our Jack's takedown there in.
The benefit,
see how it plays.
The benefit though to having it in a spellcracker deck like what you run, John, is that you have higher chances of just being able to fire this off, and then plus just natural recursion and ways to make it do more damage. You could give it double damage, you can add extra spell power to it, so this card just becomes like it's kind of like the combination of, I guess, I don't even know what I guess like a slower or a free prodigious sorcery type effect, right? Because you play it for 3, and then if you recur and hit it, it did 6. You know what I mean? If you're able to give it double damage, it can hit 12.
The thing is like I don't know, like I'm not sure about it. I don't just read it and I'm like, this is definitely going in my in like a spell crack deck. Like I think it's worth trying out, but I'm not. It's not like a knockout out of the park or anything for me.
If it hit units, then
yes, then it'd be no
like,
question.
No question, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's the expense. Like we got Seer right, and people, a lot of people were thinking that was going to replace Torch a lot in a lot of throne lists, and like I tried it in my Spellcrack, and for me, it was just not even close. Like the 1 extra cost on it just completely ruined it for me in that deck. So this one says 3 on it, so I'm extra wary of this spell because of that, honestly.
Fair. Yeah, that makes sense. 3 damage on sight. It destroys Tomb, it destroys Garden. But I think those are the only ones that are seeing play right now, right? And all the other ones that aren't are 4. Like
the Yeti. I don't know.
Oh yeah, the Yeti one. Yeah, I guess that's relevant. Yeah,
that one dies to a light breeze.
But then Arcanum, Office, and I think that's it, right? We're not seeing any of the other ones right now. It doesn't hit, so granted, you have multiple ways of increasing your spell damage, so maybe, I don't know, it'd be interesting to see it. Either way, I think the card in an aggressive deck, I don't think you're running 4 of. I think it's gonna be closer to like a 2 of, but I guess it just depends on your curve.
Yeah, I think it's more for like, yeah, like just more of just a red deck, maybe not even running blue at all for like prodigious, but maybe you give it like double damage with the touch, and then it just recurs itself, so it just gives that deck reach and like staying power if you do get to the mid game. So it's worth trying there, I think, for sure.
Yep. Okay, moving into time, we have Archmagister's Prophecy. This is the 2-time relic. Once per turn, you may pay 1 to gain 1 health, and give one of your units +1 health. At the end of your turn, if you have 12 units with different combinations of attack and health, you win the game. So what this means is that every turn you can pay 1 and you will gain 1 life, and then you can modify the health of one of your units. Now, you have to have 12, so full board of units, and all of them have to have different combinations of health versus attack. So like a 1-4, 1-3, a 2-4, etc., etc. And then if so this is so
Yeah,
this is
but
an alternate win con. This is
That was perfect.
yeah, it just like this is one heck of a build around, 100% build around. For an
Is Kaifas face palming there in the art? I think that kind of says it all.
he's not, but it might as well be. Like I think that's probably the pun there, because yeah, like this is like for casual, and even then, I just don't see any kind of. I think it's gonna be neat, but gosh, do you have to jump through so many hoops? Like having a full board.
I mean, that's already quite like a setup cost. Like, and then if it's full of tokens and every turn you're gonna like modify it once per turn, it's like, I mean, they read the prophecy and they didn't understand it. I don't know what happened with this card. I don't. Yeah, I'm cool.
This one's pretty out there. Like I really love having access to alternate win cons. This one is way too much work for me to even want to explore brewing around. Like, maybe when I have some real eternal downtime after all these tournaments and stuff. But no, I'm Kaifas face palming on this one.
Like the problem with this one is that like you're winning already. If you have 12 units on the board and your opponent's not killing any of them, you're winning already. And
you would hope so.
And it 100% goes, or not 100%, because I guess you could be going up against a mill strategy, but it still kind of goes against what your opponent's trying to do, right? They're going to try to clear your board to get in damage. So yeah, all right, let's move on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Clockwork Sentinel is next on the list. This is a 12.
Tower.
I'm sorry, Clock Tower. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Clock Tower Sentinel is a 12/12 Sentinel for 9 time. At the end, it's funny how the 3-cost unit has 4 influence and the 9-cost unit has 1. Anywho, at the end of your turn, each of your units get a +1/+1, so they continuously get buffed. At the end of your turn, if Clock Tower Sentinel is in your void, units in your void get +1/+1. So, I mean, I guess it's kind of neat because it works with like go wide strategies if it's in play, and it works with some void shenanigans, so maybe you could bypass the 9 cost. So, I mean, I guess you just leave it in your void and let it keep pumping your team, and then eventually you do some kind of big Varar shenanigans to get multiple things back. I don't know. Like, there's no real discount for the 9. It doesn't have Overwhelm. It's still just a +1/+1, so it's going to take a couple of turns before it gets going. Granted, a +1/+1 sometimes does do a lot of work, but it is at the end of your turn. So your opponent's going to have the end of your turn plus... Oh, I never mind. I guess it does activate, so fair. All right. Fair enough. I don't know. John, what do you think?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with everything you said about this guy, Jedi. I mean, you can definitely do better than a 9-drop with no evasion and just a bunch of stats. I think there's definitely some kind of deck for a card like this. Nothing like jumps at me or comes to mind right away or anything. Maybe, I've seen like there's been like a Wisp deck, that really does void recursion stuff. So maybe if you sneak this into your void in a deck like that, maybe that's worth it. But I don't really see somebody wanting to go for the while it's in play line of text really. I don't know. This card doesn't really trip my trigger personally.
I mean, does he go with Kairos maybe, right? Dion 12 when he comes into play, or drawing 12?
I mean, wouldn't you rather just have another Kairos? I guess I don't know, but then you're milling yourself, kind of. I don't know. No, I mean, all those decks always just win when Kairos is in play, right? Like, it doesn't really matter if your next card's gives you 3 cards or 6 cards. Like, you just win because then you just draw another 3 or 6 cards. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think those decks need this.
Does he go? Maybe he goes with the whatchamacallit? Yushkov? The one? No, not really, because Yushkov's what?
You'd
a
have to get him
6?
in play
Yeah.
already somehow. Because Yushkov has to, in order to punt them, like the units have to be in play already. So
yeah, I don't know. Alex, you have anything?
maybe a Sentinel. I've seen Sentinel Reanimator decks in my Eternal time. I'm not really that familiar with that strategy, but maybe.
I mean, I was just gonna say that, like, if some
sorry.
reanimator strategy can like put it into the void.
Well, it would have to be a Sentinel Reanimator because, like, I think the normal Reanimator strategy is doing much more powerful things than this. Like Azendel, for example, you know, with Big Var and things like that. So
Yeah, I just don't. I like your idea about the wisps. That might be right, because that
there might be something there.
That deck has a lot of like natural recursion for the wisp. So if you just put that in the board or in the void and just have it continuously pumping the wisp for a turn, like that could be a thing. Yeah, I could see that maybe.
It could be. That's just the only thing that kind of jumps out at me. But yeah, there's probably something there.
Yeah, because even with the stranger that gets back the Voyager or whatnot stranger, it's like you're paying 9 to get 3 things back and then or 5 things back, and then one of them is a 9 drop. Like, that seems really slow.
All
right, well, that's gonna do it for Clock Tower Sentinel, and that's time. So we're gonna start moving into Justice. Justice, we have a Silver Blade Intrusion. This is the 1 Justice fast spell. Give 2 of your units invulnerable to damage this turn. If you have 5 Justice Influence, create and draw a 3/3 Valkyrie Denouncer. If the enemy player has 4 or more cards in their hand, play 1 as well. And of course, Valkyrie Denouncer is the 3/3 for 5 Argent Port that has Revenge and Flying. Of note, it does only give invulnerable to damage this turn. That means that things like Harsh Rule and Annihilate will still destroy the unit. It pretty much stops it from dying to things like Hailstorm, or if you should give like Deadly to, you know, a ping effect or something like that, it will save it. Or obviously unit damage, or unit combat.
Relic weapons as well.
Yeah, good point. Alex, what do you think about this guy or this spell?
So clarify it for me, guys. So if you have 5 Justice, when you cast this spell and the opponent has 4 more cards in their hand, you're gonna get a 3/3 flyer in your hand, and one of them is gonna go on to into play. You're gonna get
Indeed.
2 3/3s.
For 1 mana, 2 of your units become invulnerable to damage this turn, and then you get a 3/3 in play and a 3/3 in your hand.
Like, I want this to be good. Seems like for 1 power, that's so much stuff.
Right.
Like, but that's like green deck, you know?
Yeah. You're totally right about
I
this.
mean, there's 3 variations of Justice decks out there that I think are always, or actually I guess 4. There's a Combre deck. There's a more mid-rangey or big Combre than aggro. There's Valkyries, and then there's Paladins. So there are, and every once in a while you still see Mono Justice show up from time to time, you know, laying the hate on somebody. So I think there's still plenty of options for the influence as well. And I agree with you, Alex. Like, it feels like for 1 power you're getting a lot. Once again, I almost feel like this is more towards an aggressive deck, where you're gonna win combat against another aggressive deck and then just outvalue them. It gives you a little bit of insurance policy versus some type of control decks, but then once again, it's based on the removal. A Spellcrack deck you'll probably do very well against because all their removal is damage based. You're talking about something like an Argent Port Control or Justice based control. Like this doesn't do anything against Vanquish, Harsh Rule, or Defiance either. So I think it's specifically like the Spellcrack decks. So I'm not sure, John.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I think this basically, because of what you just said, I think this card is just relegated strictly to markets. But I think there's going to be some decks where this is a pretty good market card. Maybe one that you want in your market.
Yeah, I actually like that as a market card. I agree with you there. I think that's exactly where this card needs to go. Because going back to that thing about the aggressive deck, there are some times or that point in the game where you're going to attack knowing you're going to end up just losing a unit, but you're hoping to get more damage in than what that unit is worth. And this kind of negates that, right? You can go in there and swing, and they're like, okay, they're attacking to get in, 4 or 5 points of damage, so I could just block these two things as sacrificial lambs. And then this essentially can not only negate those blocks and still get in the damage, but then give you an additional unit or two to put on the board. So yeah, I think it has some application, but it's definitely not going to be a 3 or 4 of in any deck.
No, I certainly don't think it's really main deckable in any, even like a mono Justice deck, like, because the invulnerable to damage is so hit or miss, and then the fact that it only does the thing you really care about with 5 Justice, and even then that thing is only going to be good against, like all this stuff is only good against certain decks, right? Like some decks don't care that you're putting out 3/3 flyers.
Yep. All right. Next card up, we have Leda.
Loser.
Svetya's Advisor. This is a 2/4 soldier for 3 justice, and she reads, when you play a site, it gets +1. What's the word?
+1 green mountain.
What's the word? Oh man, I had a word for it. Durability?
I think that's the actual term. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's durability. Now I'm gonna.
I think that's completely correct. No, let's go with that.
Okay.
If it's not, it should be.
Yeah. At the end of your turn, advance your site's agenda. So I'm assuming this means that it gets to play a second one of its spells.
Yes, yeah. That's what a site's agenda is. It's the list of spells in that order.
So I just wanted to make sure it didn't like tick it up but not give you the spell. That seems like kind of bad actually, so never mind. Yeah, of course they just let you do it. Which actually, this was one of the cards that started to see a lot of hype when it was first spoiled, and I have not seen it on ladder yet. And I wonder if it's just a little awkward because there's Huru Palace, which I think goes with her. The other Justice sites are Arcanum's still pretty good as well. Actually, yeah, I'm a little. Actually, she would probably go even better with Arcanum because you could play her and then later on play Arcanum and still somewhat be able to attack. Well, I guess you wouldn't want to attack with her. You want to keep her alive. I'm not sure. It's interesting. But
well, she's a great blocker. Like you can put her down turn 3, and then she's just gonna do her thing when you get your site out. So it's like she's gonna defend you pretty well. Probably not really attacking with her. She's just got a big butt, so she could defend you pretty good. And like you said, the site, the Arcanum, it goes with that. The sites that it's going to work with are going to come out, a couple turns after she comes out. So you don't have to like time it and play her after your site or anything weird like that.
Let's talk about that for a second though, because actually that's a very good point. You're gonna want her typically to come down before the site because of the fact that when the site comes down is when it gets the extra durability. So if she comes down after the site, it will not get that. But at the end of your turn is when she advances the agenda. So if you can essentially kind of sneak in an ultimate on your opponent, right? Where they're like, okay, I have one more turn to kill it. I'll kill on my turn when it passes it back, right? So it starts your turn, you take it to the third or the final spell in the agenda, and they think it's not going to hit the unit till the following turn, and then you play Leda. Now at the end of that turn, you're getting that Dizzo, you're getting that Maknadi. No, what is it totally goes. She goes with Tomb. I just realized that. She comes down on 3, and then you play 2 on 4, and then you could look for your power and sabotage them. Ooh, or give her revenge. Ooh.
Ooh.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
you're
Tomb
right.
is
No,
like the
she's good.
natural fit with her because it's a curve out play. Like you mentioned, all the other ones are like the sites are much bigger than her as far as like the costs that she'd be good with, and then the other ones that she'd be good with aren't in her colors at all.
Yeah.
So there's that, and she's just like a very unimpactful 2/4 for 3 otherwise in Throne in the 3-drop slot, which has so much competition.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, yeah, I think she has some very high potential to do some busted stuff. Like I don't know. No one's figured it out yet. Obviously, we haven't been running into some busted Lada deck or Lada deck on Lada.
Nice,
Oh no.
nice.
Anyway,
Uh-huh.
but like, yeah, I've been brewing with this one on myself already. I definitely haven't cracked her yet. But there's something there for sure that I feel like there's something busted that you can do with her.
I mean, the cool thing is she puts Arcanum and Huru Palace out of reach of like Eclipse Dragon and the other, what's the other 4-cost? Oh, I thought there was another 4-cost spell that kills sites. I don't remember now. Maybe it's 5. Maybe I'm thinking of burn them all. I don't know. Anywho, yeah, the end of the turn thing though, it kind of is a little bit of a nombo with Huru Palace, right? Because I'm thinking you can play her or play the palace, give her the +4/+4, and then immediately sack the city. But it's not until end of turn. But you could still give her the +4/+4 and then draw 2 cards at the end of turn. So that's still pretty darn good too. The cool thing is, and actually I think and see, she goes really good with Arcanum because she comes down, you play her, then you play Arcanum, right? Then you play the 2 cultists, and then at the end of exiles, and then at the end of the turn, you can either give yourself power equal to the units in play, or you could draw 2 and gain light. Like, yeah, she's got some power behind her. Dizzo's
sites are powerful.
Dizzo's office, you can kill something with cut ties, and then you could call or scheme. Like, yeah, there's some. I think there's 2 ways to play her. Is essentially to, I mean, I don't know, just getting 2 triggers off your site is pretty darn good, especially when you can get your site off in 2 turns. Like, that's a lot of spell value. Yeah,
like the thing is with sites though is some of them really aren't even there for the payoff, so
oh yeah, for
but
sure.
that's just the nature of the sites, of course. But no, there's so much potential here with with Lada.
Let's see, we'll find Lada on the ladder.
Let's go.
All right. Next up, we have Mother of Skies. This is the 1/4 Shaman Serpent for 2 primal. She has flying, and the first time you play a multi-faction unit each turn, play a 1/2 Cloud Snake with flying. So of note, multi-faction is any kind of unit. Any kind of unit that has 2 factions, doesn't have to be primal if you have some kind of weird rainbow thing going on. And of course, it is only the first time you play a multi-faction unit. So should you play a second one that turn, you won't get anything from Mother of Skies. 1/4 body for 2 flying is definitely overstated for the cost. It is double primal. 1/2 Cloud Snake is nothing to really write home about. Maybe this has a bit of a home in like a version of the Elysian Flyers where the 1/2 gets buffed into a 2/3 or a 3/4. But yeah, no, I think this is just kind of like a fun card to play with. Nothing really stands out to me about this, John.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that about basically the Elysian Flyers deck in general when it was kind of fresh, and it turned out to be very constructed, viable, and like competitive. I think this card probably that card kind of that deck got nerfed pretty hard, but maybe this replaces one of the nerf pieces well enough to where that becomes a deck again, and we start seeing it crop up on ladder. Like, this has very direct synergy with like that ambush 1/1 that's multi-faction, for example, because then you could craft it more easily in that deck already to where you get the free snake on your turn and the opponent's turn. And like that whole game plan of that deck is just spamming cloud snakes already, and so that's literally what this does. I think it'll find a home in constructed.
The only problem I see with at least the shell of the Elysian deck is that one of the main cards that deck runs is Humbug Nest, which is one double time on 3, so it makes the double primal from this on 2 a little awkward. It's not impossible. It's definitely doable with multi-faction power, but also it doesn't count. 1, the units are mono faction, but 2, it doesn't count as a unit anyway, so there's a little bit of nombo there, but I guess you can modify it a little bit. I'm trying to think of how many actual multi-faction flyers they have in that deck, and I think that dragon was the only one. Is there another one I'm not thinking of?
I'm not sure. I never actually played that deck. I just played against it. If there's not enough, like, I mean, for example, in Expedition in general, I haven't actually looked to see what all is in the format that this can really just go with. This one was not one that jumped out at me as far as I'm excited to brew with, and I only have so much time for like these tournaments, this and next weekend and stuff to brew for. So I'm kind of crunch time. But I don't know, like off the top of my head, maybe not. Maybe in Elysian flyers, it's more of like a 3-color flyers or something. I just don't even know like what's available in Expedition. I'm sure you could probably pair the primal with any color in Throne and find something there, but I don't know.
Alex, you have anything on Mother?
I don't think I've ever seen a 1/4 flyer for 2.
Yeah, that's some nice stats.
Like, yeah, it is pretty nice stats. So it's like tempting, but then it's like the first time you play a multi-faction unit, and then she costs 2 primal though. So it's like she should be a 1 primal. Like, it goes against kind of what she's trying to do, but yeah, I don't really like this card. I mean, it blocks Milos. So did Lele.
I mean,
Leda.
Normally I would just agree with Alex. That deck surprised me in general, right? Like it was literally running cloud snakes. So I don't know. I think
Like,
it's worth checking out at least.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
All right, so keep it on you, Alex, because you're such a fan of Royal Decree. Turn to Seed is a slow spell for 3 primal. Choose an enemy unit, transform it, and each enemy copy into 0-2 seeds, including from their hand, deck, and void. So pretty much it has to be a unit and it has to be in play, but if that's it and you hit it, every other copy of it is turned into a 0-2 seed, and that's the last to be seen of it this game. What do you think, Alex?
I mean, I love this card. It's like blue removal, right? Primal removal. Is the little seed the seed that it makes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you do get something later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
yeah, for our listeners, right? Like a little seed is a 0-2 that the opponents can play from their hand. It's a 1-cost primal, which I think they don't have the primal actual cost, but 0-2 Mandrake unit ultimate. When you start your turn with little seed for the 5th time, it gets +5/+5 and overwhelm. So these things eventually do something.
They eventually do something, but you can totally put a monkey wrench in your opponent's
I mean,
unit combos.
Look at your match history, like with certain decks. How many turns on average do your games even go? This takes 5 turns while it's on the board to become a threat. So,
I mean, it's a pretty mean card. Like, your opponent's gonna not be very happy with you, but I like this card very much.
John, do you run this over Royal Decree?
Would I? I don't know. Probably. I do. I like in a Spellcrag list. Decree is usually part of the market package there, and AOE like Hailstorm is rampant in that deck as well. With recursive ability too. So, and sometimes you regret decreeing an opponent when they when you fix their power with giving them the free seek powers, right? So this kind of, and you don't care about 0/2s gumming up the board, and you have so much time to get some sort of way to deal with that, whether it's like a damage boost snowball or like just an AoE like hailstorm effect. Like I think this is a very good card personally as well. Like this probably immediately replaces Royal Decree for me in my like spellcrack decks.
A couple other things to note about it is the fact that it does transform the unit, so you don't have to worry about entomb effects or revenge effects, and it turns all of them into 1-cost 0/2s, so that's another way to negate the effects of even-handed golem.
Yeah, one issue, I mean, the downside here is like Royal Decree versus it, right? Like Royal Decree can take out things before they even become an issue, right? Like this one has to be an enemy unit that's already been summoned into play. So that's like the downside is they get at least the first trigger off of it, whereas Royal Decree snipes it before it has a chance to do anything.
But then once it's out, Royal Decree is useless against it.
That's correct.
And take it out. So it's kind of like for what the Royal Decree missed, I could see decks having both of those cards. I'm actually
True.
Or
I mean, they both
is
have
this-
pluses and minuses, and some decks can more easily deal with these seeds than others, and some, you know, like if you're like an aggressive deck attacking on the ground, you're not going to want this in your market because opponents playing seeds is still just jamming up your attacks and slowing you down, so they might find another way to deal with your game plan. And so like this is obviously not just going in any deck or any market, right, in Primal, but I think this is a strong card.
Yep, it will definitely see some play. Speaking of cards to see some play, this one's already starting to show up on the ladder. This is Dizzo Cabal Racketeer. The 1/4 rogue for 3 Shadow reads unblockable. Summon, you may spend power equal to an enemy unit's attack to steal that unit while you have Dizzo. A couple of notables, it is a summon effect, so you have to steal the unit the turn it is played. It is not a repeatable effect. And of course, if they kill Dizzo or do something, even transform it, it's while you have Dizzo. So if anything happens to Dizzo and he's off the board, they will get the unit back. Another thing is that if the unit is able to attack on your opponent's side, when you get it, you will be able to attack with it. I think that's about it.
One thing to note about effects like this is the way Eternal works, right? Like, let's say you've stolen one of their guys and you're attacking with, Dizzo and their guy. Well, they can like kill, and let's say you're also attacking with a third unit. They can like kill Dizzo during that combat that you've already committed to, and they like immediately get access to their guy back, right? Like it just kind of zips over to their side of the board and suddenly they can block with it. So you do kind of open yourself out to blowout potential just with this kind of effects in general. So
yeah, this is almost kind of one of like the last cards you want to play or wait to your opponent's top decking to make sure you have that little bit of insurance.
Yeah, like if you're using it as like a finisher, definitely that's one way. Or if you have ways to capitalize on temporarily controlling units, such as sacrifice effects, is another great payoff for like madness style effects.
Yeah, I think it's quite strong. Alex, anything?
No, I mean, not really much to add. You got to kind of be careful, like John said. When I was writing notes on this guy, I was like, you can use it to take small utility creatures, I guess. Like, I don't know, like 1/1s, like the Carver or whatever, like weird things like that. But you're talking about using it for like the final blow. I'm going to take your blocker and swing in because, I mean, it's pretty easily dealt with, I guess, so the opponent can get their unit back. So you just got to be careful. I don't know if I like it.
Yeah, I'm pretty low on it myself. I haven't had a chance to play with them yet. Just the fact that the summon can just be, it's not necessarily like an ongoing thing. Like you just kill Dizo and then it's like as if nothing happened.
Yeah,
You know, like it's not like a huge effect, but like there's some uses I can see for this guy in Eternal for sure. I think the power level might be there for Expedition. So definitely worth more I think worth exploring and brewing with there than in Throne, for example.
Plus
but
he's only one attack, so it's not like he's impactful on the board himself either. Like I think in most cases,
well, there's another card we'll talk about later that I think has some uses with Dizo here, but
I think in most cases you'll probably just be fine running a Carnus and get the 3 damage unblockable plus a free card right off the bat.
pretty much, yeah. And a lot of times, like you can choose, you know, that one of those free cards right there lets you just deal with that unit you were going to be able to steal with that power, because it's, I mean, it's not going to be easy to take anything significant with Dizo, right? Like because he's 3 and then the summon costs that unit's power, so to take anything of significance,
unless you're adjusting your
have
removal,
to have a lot of power.
Unless you're adjusting your removal to be like minus, you know, negative X.
Right.
Kind of removal.
Or cheating on one end of the cost, or yeah, there's ways, but
all right.
Yeah.
Let's move on to our next one. This is Silver Blade Menace, and they seem to be hating on Spellcrag again, John. 3/3 Nightmare Valkyrie for 4 Shadow. She has flying. Summon, deal damage to the enemy player equal to the number of spells in their void, and you gain that much health. So Temporal and Spellcrag, you seem to be at a slight disadvantage yet again with this one. I mean, this card, a 3/3 for 4, is just slightly undercosted and not really, but I mean, shoot, even just playing this with 2 spells, I feel like you're already up. You know, she's a 3/3 that's going to eat removal, and she already did a 4-point life swing. And then later in the game, if there's like 5-6 spells in there, 10-12-point life swing seems huge to me.
Yeah, there's a hilarious number of games I've played in Eternal where like playing this card on one of those final turns would have just one-shot my opponent, you know, like this punishes some decks so hard. This is a cool card. Like, you know, I love like if they think Spellcrag or decks like that are an issue, like this is the way to go about. You know, you don't just nerf cards that people like to play with. You can print cards like this that, you know, that may punish that strategy in some way, right? Like I think this is cool. I think this is a powerful effect. That summon effect is so powerful, and because it's a summon effect on a unit in this game, you can't do anything about that other than like Aegis.
The interesting thing about it is like the tension between her and Rizon, because like Rizon wants more spells in your void, and that's gonna make her stronger. But then the 3 damage from Rizon's arrow can kill her, so it's like, you know,
that's a flavor win.
Yeah, no joke. Like that might be, I might try Ambition Valkyries. But I think that's kind of funny. Alex, you had something to say?
It's like a flying fear tracker, basically. I was playing John's spells deck against Mono Shadow, and they wrecked me with this guy.
Right? Yeah. What can you do? I mean, other than just have a timely Aegis?
It's like very easily dealt with, and a couple times the Aegis saves you from you know the power that gives you the Aegis or whatever, but they keep recurring it, and it's like, okay, that 3/3 stupid flyer is gonna kill me.
That's nasty. Yeah, I don't think this, like, maybe there's like a shadow kind of even deck that main decks this card, but I think most like Throne decks, I don't think are looking to main deck a card like this, but I do think this is a powerful market option because this will literally just straight up kill some opponents, like with that summon effect. That is a crazy summon effect.
I actually don't hate this in a Stone Scar deck either, because of the fact that like you're gonna be just
that deck doesn't have a lot of reach as far as like evasion.
Yeah, and plus, you know, against another aggressive deck, if you guys are trading off Torches and Sears and Annihilates aggressively, this could be a decent life swing that allows you to win the race. And or if you go up against a control deck and they, you know, they have the nut draw where they just have the removal spell all the way up the curve to kill your entire curve, you top deck this, you might still be in it. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, we're
It
trying
goes.
there.
It naturally is with mill too. You know, if you're milling your opponent's
True.
ooh,
deck with
yeah.
spell.
Yeah, because the Eternal in general has like gone towards supporting not just mill as a strategy, but like mill as part of like a normal winning strategy with like units and damage, right? Like there's like a mill threshold kind of payoff now in the
Uh-huh.
game. So yeah, maybe in like a deck that's going that way.
All right, that's Silver Blade Menace. All right, to round off Shadow, we have the big headliner for this campaign. This is Akaria, First Reaper. That's right, she is back from the dead. 5/5 Nightmare Valkyrie for 6 and 6 Shadow Influence. Flying, deadly, summon, kill an enemy unit or site, and then entomb, the enemy player discards each spell from their hand. Alex, what do you think of Akaria, buddy?
I mean, if you can cast her, she's pretty amazing. She's like the summon kill ability, a unit or a site, and then when she dies, she like kind of smacks you on the way out too. Flying deadly 5/5. I mean, the only thing wrong with this card is the 6 shadow, but other than that, it's a great card.
I mean, have you seen how much interloper is going around? Like that six shadow is trivial in these days of Eternal. it's
Well, I'm
basically
saying like that's the
trivial.
only problem, right?
You're totally right.
But yeah, you're definitely still not going to see her in any 3-color deck, though. I feel like you're living very dangerously if you're playing her in 3-color. 2-color, I could see it.
Jedi, have you ever played Eternal?
6 influence? How late do you want these?
3-color deck, dude. These 3-color decks already have like 3/3/3. Isn't that the same thing as 6 and 1?
Yeah,
like
I mean, I guess
I would not put any influence requirements past any Eternal player. They always find a way.
Man, I don't know. I want to see her on curve at the latest on 7. At the latest, I think you could run her in 2-color decks with maybe 2 power that doesn't have shadow in it, maybe. And even then, I would be a little skeptical about it. I would still probably want every source to be shadow with a couple of dual power and stuff. But
I think she'll shine in a deck that really tries to get her out on curve. Like, we saw in the Expedition season last time all those decks that were basically mono shadow, but had like like they were Argenport really for the merchants or Xenon for the merchants, and
yeah,
it was basically mono shadow decks that were going for
casting the
Kazbu
shadow.
curves out, and he's like 5 pips on 5, and people were curving out just fine in Expedition last, and we had worse fixing in that Expedition. So I don't know. I think this will even really shake up Expedition. Like it's a very powerful card. Like
The only problem is you're not taking into consideration that probably 80% of the field right now is aggro decks.
true. Like no, like that's without any meta consideration.
Fair.
That's true.
Fair. I mean, the power level is straight up there, right? She's an automatic 2-for-1 and potentially a 3 or 4-for-1.
Mm-hmm.
She's really strong. There's not much to say about her. Like Alex hit the nail on the head. Like, everything about her is absolutely gravy, except for the influence, and even then, it's not impossible. So yeah.
If she's like a real problem to me, and I'm running time, and for example, I'm considering busting back out the Edict of Grodov, just because it bottoms her, and so you don't have to deal with the Entomb.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yep.
that card has looked real bad ever since they nerfed it, but I'm eyeballing it again with with this card in mind.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, she's a nasty one.
Okay.
Definitely gonna make some constructed splashes, but no splashing her.
no splashing. Yeah.
All right, jumping into Aurelian Suppliers could be our first multi-faction card. This is a 2/2 rogue for 3 Praxis. He has charge and then summon. If the enemy player has more cards in their hand than you, draw a card. if they have fewer units than you, draw a card. So base floor is a 2/2 charge for 3. Then you have the potential of drawing a card off of Supplier if either you have more units than your opponent, or you have fewer cards than them in hand. And then the ceiling is obviously a 2/2 charge for 3, and you draw 2 cards. So odd-handed golem.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much to make this card work. I do feel like you want to be a lower curve aggressive deck, either or both put together, because the last thing you want is for Supplier to kind of be sandbagged in your hand. It's not the end of the world if you have to sandbag it a little bit, but the more time you give your opponent to kind of set up the board and adjust their game plan, the harder it's going to be for you to really trigger Supplier. So I think in best case scenario is you have a low to the ground curve, you get out early, you play your first, either play on curve to get her out and draw your cards, or vice versa, you have a low enough curve where you could be the first to play 2 cards in 1 turn to set you up for that. But yeah, Supplier is really strong. Any body that draws you cards there's not much to say here. We already know the power of that thanks to even-handed golem. So it requires a little bit of setup, which I like. I think that's a little more fair, but the payoff is definitely there. John?
No, I think you basically said it all. If you can find some way to like get maybe some Warcry going with this guy, he'd be cooler, because the stats are the one part that's lacking, right? But no, I think in any deck that wants to play this card, I think your fail case is basically going to be 2/2 charge that draws 1 card. I think the majority of the time you're going to get at least 1 card out of him. And if your deck is kind of built with this guy in mind, you're probably going to mostly get the 2 cards off him. So I think this is a card we're going to see not in a lot of decks, but I think we're going to see him in, a low to the ground, like the decks you described that would want him. Like I think he's going to be showing up in those decks, and you're going to really want this card is what's going to make that deck much better than it has been in the past. Like I don't know about you, but I've seen Praxis go wide, kind of at least tried in every format, and I think this is a real card for that deck.
Yeah, it's definitely a solid tool to use against control where they're trying to have more cards than you and they're bound to have less units than you in play. So I like Aurelian Supplier. I think it's going to do some work. Okay, moving on to Rakano. Alex, tell me what you think about Ordnance Scavenger. This is the 5/5 Gunslinger for 6 Rakano. Summon, discard cards from your deck until you discard 5 power cards. Then draw a weapon from your void you discarded this way. Of note, you're simply drawing it, so you're not going to be able to play it this turn unless you have an absorbent amount of power, because Scavenger is 6 cost. And of course, you can, I highly doubt, you're probably excuse me, with 5 power, you're probably going to mill, 10 cards on average, give or take, right? 10, 12 cards, I think. Considering power is a third
should
of
be
your deck.
Closer to 13, 12, 13. Yeah, it should be at least that, I would think. But yeah.
So what do you think, Alex?
I mean, the body's pretty like I can't see me in this, and I could see a limited card, but for constructed, unless like maybe the armory deck, obviously, but the body's really underwhelming for that cost. 5/5 for 6 feels like it's pretty much a vanilla unit after it does its enter the battlefield stuff. So I'm not a big fan of this guy.
Yeah, I agree. And the mill is kind of somewhat irrelevant because Rakano really doesn't have anything that benefits from that. So it's a little odd placed. I think you're right. This would have been a pretty fun limited card, but constructed wise, actually, it probably wouldn't be a fun limited card because it would probably mill a third of your deck.
Right.
So that's
I thought you hated Sunset Priest Jedi.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the light, the silver lining for every card, but I do think this one just kind of didn't. This one's just bad. Do you have anything to add, John?
No, I'm not really seeing the appeal here, honestly.
Okay.
It's expensive. The body's not great. The summon effect, what? Like, I don't know. No, no, thank you.
Okay, moving on. Edge of Uprising. This is the +6/+6 relic weapon for 8 double Skycrag. Fire primal, that is. When you deal damage to an enemy, draw a card, then discard a card. So anytime this you deal damage, it will cause a trigger to loot. This means that if you have this equipped and you sear their face for some reason, or no, it says an enemy. Yeah, so if you sear a unit, then you'll be able to draw and discard a card, which fuels both the Valkyrie and the what was the other card that punched you for playing spells now that we just talked about? I'm drawing blank. Oh no, never mind.
The Silver Blade.
Yeah,
The Menace.
yeah. And then Edge of Uprising costs 1 less for each of your units with 1 attack or less while it's in your hand. Yeah, I mean, I guess the second part is kind of a build around, and you kind of want that to happen because paying 8 for a +6/+6 is pretty medium. Like we have that in limited in improvised club.
Oh, this is not an 8 cost relic weapon. This is like I don't know,
A 4?
3 or 4 cost relic weapon. This is maybe even 1 or 2 like on a good day. Maybe even 0 sometimes. No, this is a good card.
It's good, but like how many 1 cost units or 1 attack units do you want to play in your deck, right? There's a stranger that, or not a stranger, I'm sorry. There's the Felm. Smuggler is a 1/4. Trying to think of Wretched Raven would go in this deck. Like what 1/4s, what 1x units do you play in your Spellcrag deck?
Well, none. This isn't going to Spellcrag. What? This is not for a spells deck to me at all.
Well, no, I was just asking because that's the deck you play.
I'm sorry.
No, I mean, is this going like a Yeti's deck?
Yes. But, or not Yetis, but like Grenadin or
okay, yeah, Grenadin. Okay,
like Jito.
No,
like
that's it.
This is in like just a go wide, Skycrag deck. Like there's so many units that are in those colors already that can go in a deck like this. There's another powerful relic that we saw make splashes in the last tournament. The Throne Room that already kind of plays a lot of those units. I think this is a very good card, and I bet it has a home in a deck like that.
No, I think you're right. I think Grenadins is where it's at, because even Yetis, I'm not too high on, because the whole point of Yetis is to make them bigger.
Right? Yeah. No, there's no. I mean, there's like there are, but the Yetis are barely like 1/1s. No, it's more like units where it's like Grenadin, just Grenadin drone. Make 2 1/1s, like things like that, where you're just going super wide with very small units, and you're not trying to buff them like with Obelisk or anything like that, but you might do, it's like the old Jito rally style deck, right? But I think there may have been more higher power units in that deck. Well, this one would be built a little bit differently, but it'd be that style, like more of like a rally style. Go wide.
Does it work when your units deal damage to an enemy? Or
no, but if this relic weapon hits an enemy unit, that does the thing.
Okay.
So yeah, like I mean, you'll those decks would run things like Torch and things like that as well. So I mean, you'll have it's some incidental ways to just trigger this looting effect, as well as just the relic weapon itself when it attacks something does the effect.
Yep, it's gonna be an interesting one for sure.
Yeah. I think you might even be able to build around that effect with some, because there's some other cards that already do that effect that are 1/1s, like the
well, so let's see, if you go Grenadin drone on 1, that gives you 2. Let's say then you go Tripwire on 2, that gives you 3, and then you go assembly.
Assembly line.
And then assembly line on 3, that gives you 6 total. So this thing's 2 on turn 4 in a perfect world.
Yeah, something like that.
That's pretty strong. That's pretty strong.
Yeah, and then this weapon at that point will kill literally anything blocking your board that's wide.
Yeah,
right?
And plus you'll still have 2 power left up for Seer or Torch. So.
And like worst case scenario, it replaces itself when you
No.
Put it out if
Well,
it
yeah.
kills something,
Thing. Yeah.
because
Right.
you'll draw
Yeah.
a card.
No,
John's like, no.
it wouldn't replace itself.
Well, if you get a 2-for-1 with this quite
Oh,
large weapon,
okay, yeah, the 2 for
in
1,
that
my bad.
case, no, but like, yeah, the looting is card advantage. That's
It's card quality.
Oh, you
quality.
don't draw a card; it's a loot. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you just get to sculpt your hand, get rid of your extra power, get rid of like your 8 drops or something like that. All right.
I mean, it's still super fun to try to build a deck with that in it.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think it's a good card. Next up, we have Open Contract, which there's a huge argument on whether to go on to your side of the board or your opponent. This is a 1 Stone Scar cost slow spell. Kill a unit with cost 4 or less. Reduce the cost of each unit in its owner's deck by 1. So now you guys can see why people have a debate about whether to use it on your opponent or your own unit. Because it doesn't care whose deck it is, it just reduces everything by 1. You do it on your opponent's units, you shut off even-handed golem, and it's just very efficient removal. You know, paying 1 to get rid of their 4. Doing it on your deck means that exactly that, it makes your entire deck 1 cheaper, which could be a huge advantage in some cases, especially if your opponent doesn't have any targets, so that it's no longer a dead card, like for example Suffocate or Defiance. I guess Defiance is never a dead card either, but for example Suffocate could end up being a late dead draw versus this still has some application. What do you think, John?
I'm not completely sure how strong this card is. You're probably more of like you have just more experience in this, in like this aggressive Stone Scar style decks than I do, I think. But I mean, I think this is definitely a good card. It seems to me like your average Stone Scar aggro style deck would love this type of removal because it only costs 1 and wouldn't care much of it all about giving the opponents cheaper units. A lot of mid-range, especially style decks in Eternal are not able, even if they were reduced by 1, are not able to general play out that many units like in any given turn. Like, I don't know, like they're not planning on it, their deck's not built around it, so like they're not going to be able to make great use of that effect anyway. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's some like you were mentioning, some even cooler thing you can do by making your own things cheaper. Nothing immediately jumps out as like super powerful or anything, but I can think of some cheeky things to do like that. Like that'd be a fun build around and maybe powerful way to do it. But I think those aggressive decks are just really looking for a card like this in general, aren't they? Like, it's just a little bit more flexible than cards that are already running.
Nope, you hit the nail on the head. Having any kind of 1 cost spell that gets things off the board is great for aggressive decks because they can continue up their curve and still clear the way.
Mm-hmm.
Alex?
Yeah, I like trying to play with the idea of killing one of your own things and seeing if that can help you. I think that sounds fun. You know, something with a cool entomb effect, and then I don't know. I'm not trying to go into too much of anyone's tech or anything, but yeah, you could play with that, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, next up we have Authoritarian Creation. This is a +1/+5 relic weapon for 3-time Justice. +1 maximum power. You and your units are invulnerable to damage from spells. I just don't see a reason to run this in your deck personally. I guess maybe if
Really?
Prodigious Sorcery. I mean, okay, mark it. Never mind, mark it. I would pretty much want this only against Prodigious Sorcery decks, and that's about it. Because, yeah, I mean, they could still be bashing in the face, right? Like, okay, so it protects you from Prodigious Sorcery, but it's not going to protect you against an Eclipse Dragon or an Ikaria.
Is Prodigious the only deck that runs like Hailstorm that really gets you? I mean, the other deck I can think of is like a Temporal deck, but they run Hailstorm and then they run Harsh Rules and things like that as well. So this wouldn't do anything there.
Yeah, the thing is they're very careful on these like invulnerable things, right?
Mm-hmm.
and much it does what it does. See, and it doesn't even protect against pump spells. So like if you're in the Combre aggro mirror and you're like, oh, I'm gonna get this out, it doesn't do anything, right? Like this is
Mm-hmm.
it does some work. I don't think it doesn't do work. I think this card has some application, but the fact that it's a relic weapon makes it. I think that's why I'm low on it. Is that yes, it protects you from what it gives you protection from, but if
like in Throne, for example, you'd probably rather just stand together every single time, right?
yeah,
If you're in Combre already.
yeah, and then it's kind of weird because it gives you one additional power, but
Yeah,
like,
what does that do for you on this card? Like, does that mean you like? To me, it's screaming like make me, and like
Like,
curve out with this as part of your game plan, right?
and then it's one attack, so it's not like you're gonna be killing anything with it.
Right. So it's similar to the primal card draw relic weapon in that way, where it's not really meant for attacking so much as utility.
Yeah, but see, that's fine. If nothing happens, you still get to draw cards. This thing, your opponent can just be like, cool, I'll just hold on to my Seer or my Obliterate until I get rid of this weapon and then kill you.
Yeah, I'll either play my garden and just ruin it, or I'll like if I'm in expedition, my dragon will just smash your face.
And then the ramp is in a weird spot too, because that ramping on 3 is like limited ramp, right? Unconstructed, we have it at 2 and 4. Like 4 ramps you 2 and 2 ramps you 1. So that makes sense. Going from 2 to 4 or 4 to 6 or 7 makes a lot more sense than 3 to 5. I mean, it's not nothing, but
I mean, your deck would have to be built with that in mind, right?
yeah,
but I don't know if that's really a thing. I wasn't quite sure. Like, I know you, like I said with Stone Scar, you've also had a lot more experience with various levels of Combre and things than I have. So I thought if I thought I was curious to see how you evaluate this card, and your impression was basically what I was thinking. I just didn't think this one really had a home where there wasn't something that could already kind of do this better.
I mean, if they make it a straight relic and not a relic weapon, then it's busted, right?
Yes.
So like they have to make it a weapon so you can get rid of it, because if not, it's just like game over potentially.
True.
So like I could see why they did that. It's just kind of a weird card. Yeah, ramping 3 to 5. I mean,
yeah, you're right. They had to be very careful with this.
yeah. All right, we won't spend too much time on it. I just don't. It's a defensive spell, so think about all the defensive spells that we've seen right now that no one's playing, right? Like the bar is set so high from it's like this just stops you from losing the game. Oh, all right, like markets are very tight as it is. You have to hit a high bar to hit that market spot. Okay, rolling right along, I should say. We have Rolling Spikeback. This is the 3/1 dinosaur for 3-time primal. Aegis, Reckless, Summon, Create, and Draw a random dinosaur. Alex, what do you think of Rolling Spikeback?
I don't like random in my constructed games, unless it's like a Winvoke type thing. But if this was a limited card, it'd be great. Get a free dinosaur, but 3/1 that gets you just a random body. There's quite a big array of dinosaurs, so unless you're in a dinosaur deck, and you just want another dino for your strategy. But I'm not too high on this guy. I could be completely off base.
So it's funny because in limited, I don't like the 3/1, right? Because it just trades with everything. It has Reckless, no evasion. It has Aegis, but any unit can block this guy. I think in constructed, I agree. The randomness of the dinosaur is definitely a huge setback. You are drawing a card off this guy, so it replaces himself, but there's a wide spectrum of dinosaurs, right? You can get something like a Clutch Keeper that you're just never gonna play unless you have the dinosaur deck, or you can get you can
get a Scaly Gruon, right?
Yeah, or the Fishing Dinoc, so you have a 3/3 for 5. Unless you have other dinosaurs. So it's It's interesting. The Aegis makes it a little bit better, just because they have to trade a unit with it, right? And in constructed, I feel at least in this current meta, there's a lot of things that trade with it, and there's only a handful of things that can profitably block it. So the one isn't that big of a liability because I really can't think of a single deck that's not running at least a 2-1, and even then, because of things like favor and condemn, those are starting to see less and less of. More only things, I mean, I know at least in my circles, we're all moving to 3 health because it avoids getting one-shotted by salvo. So I think it's a little bit better than it seems, but it's definitely no Shadow Invoke for sure. John?
Yeah, this another area where I don't have a lot of expertise in, I guess, with the dinosaur style decks in Eternal. I've done a little bit, but I wonder if there's because of the high attack power, it makes it easier to bond things. So I wonder if this like feels like a missing piece in like a Dino Bond deck along the curve, where not only do you generate some value with the summon effect, but you can negate the issue of it being reckless by exhausting it to bond something bigger out or something like that. Like I don't know, maybe it serves a role in a deck like that, but I don't think the raw power level is very high on this guy just in general. Maybe this is another thing I haven't actually looked at, but depending on the actual legal pool of cards in Expedition, that random dinosaur may be better or worse than I think it is as well.
Yeah, if it said create a random dinosaur with bond, it would be better. I do agree with you.
Yeah.
I think it has some potential upside with bond to negate the reckless as well as help you ramp out the card, etc., etc. But
Yeah, and that's Throne we're talking about, and like Throne also has things that where you can give a dino, buff stats and killer, and so like that also makes the reckless less of a downside, while also, I mean, I think there's definitely some constructed application here, basically, but I don't know. I'm just not sure what they are exactly.
yeah,
And I don't know. Like maybe the Dino deck got a little better with this guy. I don't know.
we'll see. We'll have to find out and see. And there's not even really an Legion deck that wants that guy as well just yet. So
No.
maybe it goes better in some kind of go wide Elysian with ways of buffing your team, but I don't know. Okay, we're gonna be actually talking about this card a little more later as well for the constructed corner, but
Ooh.
this one is Spire Shadows. This is a 2 Xenon slow spell. Swap the attack and cost of each unit in your deck. So what this means is, for example, if you have a 1/5 for 5, if you play Spire Shadows, then while it's still in your deck, that unit will become a 5/5 for 1. It does this with everything in your deck, so just take its casting cost and its attack and swap those numbers permanently.
So weird.
Yeah, it's 100% a build around, but I think these. So I want to say,
Like I was just doing it to all the units in this little spoiler here, and it's like random results for sure.
oh yeah, you 100% have to build your deck around this. I think much like we're gonna see in the constructed corner, I think this card has to be in your market because you only want one of them in your deck and you want to get it as soon as possible. So I think you want one of these in your market with a very heavy smuggler slash merchant base to make sure you get this out as quickly as possible, because I feel like the decks that are going to run this, and I'm not sure, but I think off the top of my, I mean, you mainly want cards that have high cost with low attack to play this, you know what I mean? So there's a world where your whole deck is bad until you play this. That being said, it is a little more flexible than like Spire or Yisha, because those have to be in play and then you have to play your unit, versus this, as soon as you cast it, the work is done. Now you can just play your deck as usual. So I think there's some serious upside there.
It's comparable to those cards in some ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think the potential is so much higher here. I don't know. What do you think about an expedition? Since you mentioned you think it's only good in market with like presumably more than 4 ways to access your market. Like, what do you think about trying to play this in expedition right now?
I mean,
Don't even try.
I mean, going off of what my opponents have been doing, I feel like you should windmill slam it because my opponents always have the salvo on 1 or 2. So, I just like, I mean, because the thing is, you want to activate it only once because that's what your deck's trying to do. So I couldn't imagine you running 4 in your deck, because then the second one's just straight up a dead card. I mean, I guess you could always keep it for market fodder, but I don't know. Once again,
I agree with my initial reaction to this card is like straight up market card, right? Like,
yeah, I think so.
I know some people are saying they're finding success in expedition with 4 main, and I mean, in expedition, your only way to do it is either 4 main or 1 in market, which is essentially the same odds of playing it in any given game. And I don't know if 4 chances in any given deck is enough for a build around card. So yeah, no, I think it may not really do much in expedition, but I think there's probably some busted things you can do with this card in Throne. Like, to me, like part of me reminds me of that last set they just released, where we were like, yeah, this is like a build around, but I'm not sure if it's busted, but it seems fun, and I'm sure you can do some powerful stuff. This one to me just seems busted. You know, it's like a deck warping, like similar to those, like kilos and things, but man, I'm excited to brew with this one personally.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I think the memes are gonna be out there, and there might even be a legit tier 1.5, tier 2 deck out there with it. So
it's a very cool design.
Yeah, I agree. Speaking of cool designs, this one looks extremely aggressive, and we've played with this one a little bit in the preview window. This is Vorlunk Corpse. This is a 4/2 Paladin dinosaur. The dinosaur is not Paladin. It has a Paladin riding the dinosaur, for those of you that can't see the picture. It's 5 double Huru, Killer, Overwhelm, invulnerable to damage on your turn. So this card does some work. We built it in a more kind of renowned version of Huru, and at least in our playtesting games, we did about 10 on stream, and I feel like it was deceptively better than it seems. There's quite a few things you can kill with 4 attack. And the fact that it has Overwhelm means that we won a couple of games simply by playing this and then smashing something small to get Overwhelm damage across. Invulnerable on your turn means you could just keep swinging with it. That's really where you make your money, is just the fact that once you play it, you kill something, and the very next turn they have to deal with it, or they're going to be taking 4. The requirements are, I mean, double Huru is not the easiest thing. You have to be pretty dedicated. Unless you listen to John earlier in the podcast, then by all means slap it in any color deck that you want. And the fact that it costs 5, it feels like it should cost 4, but the fact that they bumped it up to 5, I feel like is a testament to how powerful this card can be. The thing I like about it as well is that even being a vulnerable 4/2, you're not afraid to play it on your turn. It dodges Annihilate, it dodges Defiance, I mean, Defiance still stuns it, I guess, but you're going to more likely than not be able to kill something when you play it, and then they have to go on their turn, so you're not worried about them having a Blazing Salvo or a Sear up to kill Vorlunk Corpse. Yeah, I don't know. John, anything to add?
It's kind of weird to me that it's it's Huru, but it's not like unseen related at all. Paladin dinosaur, right? Like, it's got 2 battle skills, so I was really hoping that it was going to be unseen and do something like in that deck, but I guess they're trying to go a different direction here. I was down this card with my initial impression, but when I saw you playing with it on stream the other day, it kind of impressed me, and I do think it has some potential, actually. Were you playing that in Expedition or Throne?
I had Palace, so it was Throne.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, I mean, it even looked playable in Throne. So I mean, that I think that makes it even. It makes me look at it even more than I would have. I don't know. Like, I think there's some potential here, and I think it has like a best friend at least edition with that one weird relic that we hate for draft, the tapestry or whatever. Like,
Oh yeah.
maybe there's something there,
Mhm.
just kind of as a weird Vorlon Corp build around deck,
Yeah.
of sorts. But it's kind of like I feel like it's got some conflicting kind of things as far as in Eternal. Like, it's a card that is similar to some, but so different. Like, I don't. It's hard to evaluate, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Um, invulnerable to damage on your turn, as we've seen, is a pretty powerful thing, and these are some great battle skills. The only kind of turnoff for me is like you mentioned, the cost, but having seen it in action, I think the cost might be justified. I don't
Yeah,
know.
the 5 does feel expensive, just a smidge expensive for sure. Maybe it's because we're used to playing the 3/4 over 1 Vorlung for 4, I'm not sure, but I mean, they made the influence requirement kind of tough, so I feel like maybe they could have dropped it down a little bit. I don't know. Alex, do you have anything to
Did
add?
you guys lose me again?
I mean, I don't know like how great this card is for constructed, but I love it. I love the design of this card. It's really cool.
Yeah, sweet. Yep, Vorlung Core, you might be a sleeper in the set. All right, next up we have the Nightmare Gates. This is a 0 cost, but triple Argent Port. So triple Justice, triple Shadow, slow spell. Sacrifice a unit to give your relic weapon +5/+5. You know, I like Armory, and Argent Port falls into the Armory window, which is kind of weird because they just forced us into creation for Armory,
Mm-hmm.
steering us away from Shadow. Uh, and like there's some small like filler units that Armory runs to like buff weapons that this could do some stuff, right? But I just taking up a spell slot. That's the issue I have, right? Like you're kind of going down a card to make your weapon pretty powerful, and obviously we know if you can recur weapons, they're gonna keep that +5/+5. I want this to be good. I just don't think it is. I think it's a little under par, like probably tier 3-ish. What?
Really?
Yeah, I just like the effect is powerful. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it isn't. It's just I'm trying to think like, all right, maybe you run like a 2 of, right?
Man,
Maybe a
relic
market
weapons are
card.
such a hard. They're such a hard thing for me to evaluate in general because they're so unique to Eternal.
You know, actually, not to cut you off, but maybe this is a perfect market card actually, because you could it's cost 0. So if
Right.
you have the relic weapon in play and you have your like whatever, let's say it survived its first attack or whatever, and you draw the smuggler, you have it in your hand, you could play the smuggler, pull this out, and then immediately sack that smuggler to buff your weapon. So there's a play I'm kind of okay with. Like you're still kind of going down 2 cards to buff your,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the issue I have. I'm trying to think of what units you can run. Like I guess in Argentport you have a handful of revenge units, but I won't see why an armory deck would run like Tactic or something like that.
No, I mean, but we have all these corrupted units now.
Oh yeah, okay,
Uh,
fair, yeah, okay. And
we
Blade
have
Crafter.
things like yeah, or like Blight Moth. Things where like in Armory, you're fighting against control, you're stabilizing, and then you just have this big weapon, and then you just win, right? Like
Like a
I don't know.
Terror-
I think I think this card is pretty good. Like there's also in the last set, what was that card? Jade Horn? Like that
Yeah.
goes so good with this card
Oh
because of
yeah.
its summon effect, and then you can do it again. Like you can with the right setup, you can like kill someone kind of out of nowhere
No, yeah,
with some
actually,
nightmare gates. And even if you had like multiple units and multiple gates like main deck, you can just play multiple in a turn and have like suddenly a giant like 2020. And there's like enthroned in particular, like you couldn't really do this in expedition because like the Argentport relic weapons just aren't there.
actually,
There's some,
no.
but you can't run in the market.
Shadow Blade,
Um
the 4 cost, the +5/+3.
Yeah, Null Blade.
Man, I actually liked what you were talking about. You
Yeah,
could Blight Moth, or you can Jade Horn, and then play the weapon on 4, and then sack. Oh yeah, actually,
yeah.
man,
Enthrone. This is a very powerful card.
yeah,
Like, there's also Enthrone, that Minotaur that I forget his name, but he would let you shift to bring back the stats. So like that's one way to just recur the stats super
Reclaimer,
easily.
yeah,
Yeah,
Reclaimer.
yeah, and then in Throne you got like the Injustice, you've got the knife, which is a busted relic weapon. So theoretically, like a free gigantic one, like that if you recur it like later while your life total's low. You've also got like the Null Blade, like you mentioned. I think there's other stuff, but like the thing that makes it a little lower in Expedition is the 0 cost makes it unmarketable. Um, but like, yeah, I mean, if your deck is set up for this is a kind of card that you could run easily for main, because each, especially if you keep putting it on the same kind of weapon and trying to recur that one particular weapon, it just keeps getting bigger every time. Like it keeps all those prior buffs. So I'm interested to play with this one. I think the ceiling is very high here with this card.
Yeah, you sold me on it. I'm gonna start brewing with it for sure. Alex?
But yeah, more interested in Throne though.
I mean, you're not playing it on turn 0 very often. It's all right.
Fair.
Just kidding.
Fair statement.
But so they made the casting cost kind of ridiculous with the influence, because you can get crazy with it, like John was saying, I think.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, relic weapons are such a weird thing, like, to evaluate. Just
It's like the hardest thing for me coming from Magic, because it's like it does
exactly
not at all,
But I'm not gonna lie, I've had an opponent like just straight up styling on me with this card already, and I was like, wow, okay. Yeah, relic weapons can be pretty powerful in Eternal. Yeah, got a lot of tools to make use of this one, so I think this is definitely a real card.
Next up, we have Counterfeiter. This is the 2/2 rogue for 2 Feln. Summon, choose one of your other units. Counterfeiter becomes its type. All units you own are that type while you have him. I mean, so like it's pretty straightforward, right? It's like another iteration of Mask Maker. So instead of the buff, you make everything that unit. So for example, you can make random things strangers, right? It like I don't know. So
quick question: does the Counterfeiter get the summon abilities from the unit it's becoming?
Abilities, no.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Like another unit summon. Does that happen when the Counterfeiter enters the battlefield or whatever?
It won't take up another unit's summon ability, but if you mean like excuse me, if you're saying like, for example, if it says whenever you play a Grenadin X happens, then I believe it will trigger that, if that's what you're saying. But as far as like when this Grenadin enters
for example, would it copy, say, Akaria First Reaper? Would it do the summon, kill an enemy unit?
Oh, no, it won't do that.
No, this Counterfeiter doesn't like duplicate the unit. That's kind of what the similar looking card Oizo did. This one just becomes its type only.
So it's just a 2/2 of whatever type you need for your deck.
So what it would do essentially is, like, for example, if you were running Akaria and the Stranger deck, Counterfeiter would come down, it will become a Stranger, and then it makes, anytime you play an Akaria, it makes her a Stranger as well.
Right, so it's a way to like play certain other cards in like a tribal deck and get that tribal buff on that card that wouldn't otherwise. Mm-hmm. So it just adds some deck building options while also limiting them to Feln in the deck, right? Because Counterfeiter has Feln in it. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Yeah, it's obviously got some build around applications. I don't know. Like, I'm not that excited for this one right now. What about you?
Yeah, like, for example, if you had Sandstorm Titan, right? If you were running a Trifaction deck and you're running an Elysian Dinosaur deck, Counterfeiter would make itself and Sandstorm Titan a dinosaur. If, so you could potentially bond out a dinosaur off of Sandstorm Titan. Does that make sense, Alex? Do you,
Yes, and I'm sorry if the question seems dumb, but hopefully, if someone else wouldn't, maybe didn't understand that either.
No,
But
no, no, not at all. It's not dumb at all. It's definitely, especially with digital card game, as they start to expand the space that they work in. There's going to be a lot of mechanics that we're not sure how they play out. Like I remember the last set review, right? We were asking how things stacked up and what the interaction was. Like Twitter was blowing up with questions. So I think it's
it's kind of
completely
like, yeah,
reasonable.
until you try it, you don't really know. Sometimes.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you, John. Though I think the fact that you're getting this ability just on a 2/2 isn't enough value that's worth a card, right? Like we don't
Right.
see a ton of tribal synergies right now. We're seeing what Totemite, Sentinels.
I have already seen one combo deck using this
Mm.
guy, but it doesn't seem like great. But it was cool.
It would seem to be better if it was colorless or factionless.
Yeah, then it would be a little more interesting to me. Like the fact that it's Feln is already
Mm.
just kind of pigeonholing its usability to me.
I guess it would do
There's-
some. I guess it could do some work in dragons, right?
Yeah, I did think about that, because there's some, various dragon support, such as like Razka, where you have so many dragons in your void. Maybe there's a combo with Counterfeiter there, or the other Razka where you play a unique dragon and get her back, or something like that. And then there's also just the collaborator that just says dragons, get +1 in lifesteal. So.
Mhm. Yeah, because it'll buff itself too, so that's kind of neat.
But yeah, like the one Raska is like it does something busted if you have so many dragons of different kinds in your void. So maybe this
Yeah,
maybe that is something.
It makes the OG carve it better, right? Because Counterfeiter will be a dragon, and then Vile Collaborator would be a dragon as well with a different name. So there's something there, but it still boils down to this thing. Like for example, if we look at Menace Dragons, right? This is
Ooh,
going to
I
take.
just thought of something too. You could Dragon Forge could fetch like any unit.
Yeah, so there's some application for it, but once again, see, that's the thing about Dragon Forge. You have to make sure you play Counterfeiter first before Dragon Forge can look up everything. And then how many of these are you going to run in your deck? Is it 1 in the market or is it 4 in the main? It's
Or what about this fetch any stranger? Fetching any unit? Yeah. Maybe there is something there already.
Get all your Grenadins back or something like that. I don't know. Like there's some application to it. Gunslingers, well, are there gunslingers in Primal? Just Shadow, right?
Far as I know, no, not in Primal.
Yeah, I don't know. At the very least, it's a 2/2 for 2, so that's fine. But I'm not sure. I think it's gonna be a fun little build around. You're gonna see some cool things with it, but I don't know if you can figure out the payoff. Like I think you have to warp your deck a little heavier to make it work, but I'm not necessarily sure. I'm sure someone will prove me wrong. All right, let's move on to the first spoiled card, or I guess second spoiled card for the set. This is World Shaper's Staff. This is a +1/+1 weapon for 3, no faction or factionless. When the wielder dies, draw a card and gain 5 colors, rainbow influence, 1 of each. Summon, play a 7/7 Prism Golem. Prism Golem is a 3-cost 7/7. And it gets a -2/-2 for each type of influence you have. So essentially, if you're playing this in a mono faction deck, it will come into play as a 5/5. So you're paying 3 for a +1/+, so for 6/6 worth of stats, essentially. That being said, though, if the wielder of the staff does die, you're going to get all 5 influences, which means it will automatically kill your Prism Golem and kill any subsequent ones as well. John, you can take this one.
What's that one shadow card? It's a weapon, cost 3, +1/+0, and when it infiltrates, play like a 5/5.
I know what you're talking
No,
about.
you're talking about
Beast Caller's Amulet.
Beast Caller's Amulet. That's
so
it.
the first one of these is a Beast Caller's Amulet where you don't have to infiltrate, and it replaces itself with the draw card. So the first one of these is pretty good, right?
I kind of like it.
Yeah, I guess I could see that. That's a pretty good assessment of, or comparison. Yeah, okay.
Like last expedition format, I know people were playing that card, Beast Caller's Amulet. It's always something like when you rip one off of an Incarnus that you're happy to see, for example, as well. 3 is a market number for expedition, so like maybe this is like a market option in expedition if you're playing like a mono justice deck or something, because I don't think this is a very exciting card if you're not in a mono faction deck, right?
Yeah, and see, and that's the thing. I guess that's a trade-off, right? You could play Beast Caller's Amulet in any color deck, as long as it has Shadow in it. And but the difference is that you get the 5/5 up front for this one, versus in those you have to make sure you infiltrate. So I guess that's the trade-off for being a little more flexible.
Another way to use this is to use it to go for the gain all influence effect. So it's like a card that replaces itself and gets you all the influence. So like another card that kind of did that was Reap,
right?
Yeah. And you have to decimate on that one, right? To do it.
Yeah, it just gains you 3 life.
This one replaces itself while doing it and gives you a dude in the meantime. So I think there's some applications there for people that are trying to do 5-color nonsense in various formats, maybe.
You also have to have, it's a weapon, so you also have to make sure you have a unit to play it on. That's one thing to consider. And then running multiples of it is pretty bad. Obviously, because the once the first one dies, it's going to negate all the second one. Or I mean, you'll still get the influence. You'll still get that, but
whether you're using it for the fixing or for the golem, I think it's just a one of, right? So it's basically just a market card, and you can only get a colorless card from the market with the in this case with the Justice market card from the last set, because it fetches the 3 cost.
Yeah, Chris.
That's like the only way to use this card really that I can think of, other than like maybe just having it, in some deck with a way to fetch the spell, like a resurface type effect, and then suddenly be 5-color. I don't know. That's about it. There's some applications there, but this is a weird one.
Yeah, I think this card would have been a lot more interesting in a limited format than a constructed, but it is what it is.
That would have been busted and limited, right?
I don't know if it would be busted. It'd be pretty
instantly fixes you for all the colors while replacing itself and giving you a guy that's hard to deal with.
It's busted for me. Like that'd be like, ooh, sign me up for that guy.
Well, how many times are you mono faction in limited though?
This time when I drafted World Shaper staff.
Well, I'm thinking more of for my 5-color greed piles.
Right. I'd go either way with this. Anyway.
But sadly, that unless they bring it in the Scion draft, that's not gonna happen.
Yep.
All right, World Shaper staff, not too bad. Okay, and this was the card we actually previewed with Collector on the show because it came out while we were recording. This is Wrath.
That was with Yada, wasn't it?
Oh no, you're right. It was with. You're right. It was Yoda Bite. You're right. I'm sorry. It was Yoda Bite. I'm sorry. I stand corrected.
Yeah, Yoda Bite.
This is Wrath of Caiaphas. This is a 7-cost slow spell. Each player discards their hand, then draws 7 cards. You may pay 2 to swap Wrath of Caiaphas from your hand with a random power card from your deck. So we talked about this one at length on that show because it was the first preview card. I like the flexibility of this card. The fact that it's not just going to sit in your hand as a do-nothing 7-cost spell, you can obviously just turn it into power, which is and it puts it back into your deck, so you're not even discarding it. You have a chance of drawing it later. And then, obviously, if you have this card in your deck, you're planning on having bigger and better things to do than your opponent. So hopefully, discarding your hand and drawing 7 is more beneficial to you. That being said, you are the one that's going to be paying 7 to do that. So you're giving your opponent a full new grip, and they probably are going to have first shot at deploying those new threats. So keep that in mind. Obviously, the best way to use this is use it for ramp early, and then when you get to 7, make sure you dump your hand so you're just straight up drawing, discarding 1 or 2 cards and drawing 7. But it's it's factionless, so it can go in absolutely every deck. It's quite interesting. I think it's a very interesting card. I think it also has some some powerful potential. It is a little slow though, and once again, my biggest thing is the fact that, like, unless you're sitting at 10, 12 power, you're still giving your opponent first crack at playing a bunch of things. I don't know. Before we give it to John, Alex, what were your thoughts on Wrath of Caiaphas?
It seems like you can really mess up your opponent's game plan by making them discard their hand that they just spent the whole game drawing and curating into the perfect hand, you know? Like those late game control decks. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, here we go. Get rid of all those cards. I kind of like it for an aggro deck when it runs out of steam if you get to 7 or if you need it for power early. I haven't come across anyone playing it though, so I'm not too. I think people don't really like the thought of giving their opponent 7 new cards and then not being able to do anything else that turn. So I don't know how playable it is, but it's a very interesting card.
Yeah, and another good thing too about it, the bad part is if you do swap it with power from your deck, your opponent does see the fact that you have it, so that's something to consider.
That's
Uh,
true.
and you know, there's also the ability you could do it more than once, so that's kind of nice, right? If you draw it with only 5 power and you really want to get to 7, you could just swap it again. And there's also a world where if you are, for example, going up against an aggressive deck and they're out of cards and you don't want to refill their hand, you just don't play it. But you're right, there is something to be said if you're going up against another mid-range or control deck where they've taken the time to draw extra cards and they've shipped stuff, and then all of a sudden now you've forced them to draw a bunch of random cards from their deck. John?
Yeah, this is definitely a build around card. If you're going for the the first line of text there that each player draws a new hand, I think it's kind of exciting to think about just ramping into this and just doing it when you can make use of the that extra power more quickly and deploy more things. Like just as a base use. And then I think there's some really interesting things you can do with this already. Um, like an expedition, you can try and cheat this out in various ways and play like a gift, for example, which is expedition legal, and just go for that and just like choke the opponent out, of the game by using this. And then there's also like the new card we talked about just a little while ago, Spire Shadows, which can just very significantly cheapen the cost of everything, every unit at least in your deck, and you're probably playing cheap things otherwise. So if you do something like Wrath after you've already played a Spire and your deck's set up for it, basically if you can make use of all those extra cards more quickly than your opponent, you might just be able to steal a game in that way, or maybe give them all charge or something like that. I mean, there's definitely a lot of interesting and possibly powerful things you can do with this card. And the fact that you can pull power with it early and not actually like have to ditch the card into your void, it just goes right back in your deck. I think that's really cool. It's a unique effect for this game, and I'm very excited to do a little brewing with this one.
Yeah, I think any mid-range control deck would be more than happy to run at least one of these in their deck and be fine with it. One last thing to consider about it is the fact that the shuffler does not recognize this as power; it counts as a spell. So having it in your deck could potentially increase your chances of getting or decrease your chances of getting power deprived in your opening hands. So that is something else to consider as well. So it's not just to seek power; it's a little bit better, even though it's a little more expensive.
True.
Is there anything or any value to like 4 in a deck to just mostly to make sure you get your power? I don't know.
I mean, especially in one of those decks I just described where it's kind of involved with your win con, definitely because it's never, it's just worst case you just swap it for 2 with a power. Like
for a power, right?
That's not a bad fail case.
There's also the slight synergy with that Felm mechanic, as far as if you have enough influence and you discard XYZ card, you get it goes into play. I mean, there's only 3 of them, I believe: the stun, the unblockable, or not unblockable, the can't block, and then Fell Rock. But I mean, there's a little bit of inherent value there as well, right? I guess it works with mill strategies as well. It fuels up both voids, so there's some added synergy there. If you're that way, you're kind of capitalizing on all aspects of the card. So
Mm-hmm.
that's something to think about as well.
Cool.
All right, well,
this is a powerful set.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
It's definitely one of the more powerful campaigns that we've seen in recent times, for sure. I almost want to say it might actually be the most powerful, but only the test of time will tell us if that's the case or not. But yeah, overall, I have no problem telling people to pick this one up. I think it's definitely worth it.
Indeed.
As far as artwork goes by, I really am not seeing. I pre-ordered it, so I have the premium ones, and yeah, there's really none of the premiums that are super stand out to me. Where I'm like, oh man, that's awesome. Like the Nightmare Gates is probably the coolest premium I see. The rest of them are kind of medium, to be honest with you, to medium to low, personally. So yeah, I think you're perfectly fine just paying gold and getting the basic version if that suits your fancy or whatnot. Just for those people that consider that or whatnot.
Fair enough.
But all right, that's gonna do it. And like I said, we definitely agree that we think it is something that you should pick up. So that is gonna lead us into our what's the play. All right, guys. So, of course, you can, if you are listening to us, I'll do the best I can to try to describe this as in-depth as possible. But if not, you can check it out on the YouTube. Just look up EternalJourney. Okay, while I'm doing this, actually, let me go ahead and load up the slightly better version for the video people. All right, so our opponent is on Destruction. We are 4 colors missing Shadow, if that makes sense to you. So we have Fire, Time, Justice, Primal. Our opponent's at 3 of 7, and we are at 8 of 8. Our opponent has 4 cards in hand. We have 3, and we're both at 9 life. The cards in our hand are 3 sigils, so I'll just leave 3 power. I'll just leave it at that. Keep it simple for you guys. The easiest hand I ever had to describe. On the board, our opponent has a stunned 2/3 Covetous Stranger, a 5/5 Blade Crafter, and a 4/3 Furnace Mage, yes, there you go, thank you. On our side of the board, we have the 3/3 Strange Gladiator, which is the Praxis one that pumps, whenever you play a stranger, it pumps all the units in your hand by 1+1/+1, and pay 4 and exhaust it to destroy a relic. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's relic. Yeah. And then a 5/6 Draconis with the mastery still excuse me still prepped. It is our turn, and pretty much I don't know, you always do a great job breaking these down right off the bat, so go ahead, John, you could take the first one.
So you said this 5/6 has not done its mastery
no
yet?
Actually, no, I stand corrected, you're right, it did, because
it looks like it's on the stranger.
Yeah, because we also played a permafrost, so we permafrosted the 5/5, and they broke it with the Furnace Mage. That's it. Yes. So never mind. It's just a flying 5/6 now. I stand corrected.
Right. Yeah, and like I don't know how long these top decks have been going on here or anything like that, but this is sitting there staring at 3 power in your hand means probably for a while. You're in a precarious spot here, but so is your opponent. Yeah, I mean, you're just at the mercy of your deck here. I think the question is whether you hold back or attack with the flyer, basically, right? And for me, I think I just attack with the flyer here and just risk it. Like, you're dead on the crackback, but if you just hang back, then you're basically dead anyway, right? All they're gonna do is kill your flyer and then attack you with both, and then they're not dead on the crackback, and then you're still just top decking while your opponent just has the advantage. So for me, I'm I think I'm just going for it here with my dragon. Going for it with both doesn't help the race situation at all, and neither does going for it really with just the 3/3. Like they might trade, they might just take 3. Either way, they're not dead to just the dragon next turn, and they still have a good attack. No, I think I just attack with the dragon and just pray they don't have removal for 1 turn, or a flyer.
Mm-hmm. Alex, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, attacking with both kills you on the crackback, so you can't do that, right?
Right.
So, like John said, I would try to take the advantage while I can, because if you wait and they have the removal anyways, then you're on the back foot and it's the game over anyways. Whereas 2 swings of the dragon ends the game if they have no answer. So super conservative, you could sit back, but I think I go for it. I don't know if you determine if they had a pause or not. Like they could have a humbug nest or something here, which would be bad, right? But I think I go for it.
So, in consideration for the A space there, obviously us having perfect information on our side of the board, we know that we're going to be 1 shy of lethal, but putting us in our opponent's shoes, we're 1 point away from lethal, and we have 3 cards in hand with 8 power. Do you really feel you're in a position to just take it to go to 1, or do you force the trade with the furnace and the gladiator?
You're not forcing a trade at all. You're by doing that, you're just putting yourself dead on board.
Well,
if I'm that opponent, I don't block that. Like, depending on what I have in my hand, like if I have nothing, but I have dead on board. If I don't block that, then I'm like, I'm in a reverse position of where you are here, and I'm like, well, I'm just going for it.
Yeah.
That's you look like a desperate man to me, by taking that attack.
See, I think there it plays in the timing. I think if as soon as it was our turn we immediately A spaced, then our opponent would have to give some serious consideration to us having something here. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of cards that could potentially mean lethal. Obviously,
so your thought is to bluff.
You want to bluff your way to victory here.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have. It was a consideration, but once again, you guys know I'm more conservative. I wish I could remember off the top of my head now, because I almost want to say that them being destruction made me, and having 4 cards, they're gonna have 5 cards in hand, made me feel like they had a lot of outs to getting rid of our gladiator, in the form of multiple forms, right? They could have had rampage, they could have seer, they could have various shadow
what weapon did they do? Did they already grab a weapon with this blade crafter? I guess is something we should have asked. Like, this is just such a bad situation you're in.
Yeah, no, they did grab it. We saw the weapon. I think it was
I feel like I remember this and they played it already.
Yeah, because
we can't tell from the screenshot.
They didn't play a hook sword. I know that because that's what we initially put them on, and they never played it. So it wasn't hook sword. I forgot what they played. I think it was a magma javelin. I'm almost positive it was a magma javelin.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So I think I think it was because of that. I actually just swung with the gladiator to see if they would trade. Because if they would trade, yes, we missed out the 2-turn clock with the dragon, but it gives us the information that now we're not dead on the crackback. And so it was like, I think that's what I almost ended up doing, because once we identified they didn't have the hook sword, like hook sword would have been the only thing to get them out of this, right? Because they would have if they had drawn Death Strike or Eviscerate, they would have needed another shadow source. So they would have needed to draw 2 cards essentially. Because they would have fired it off. So I think I end up, and I think you're right. That was the debate. A space is off the table because we just die, period. And there's a chance where they just take and go to 1. We've done it ourselves. And so the fact that I felt that the Strange Gladiator was more vulnerable is why I end up swinging with it. And if they just took the 6, or if they just took the 3, they go down to 6. And now we have a 5/6 that can easily block the Bladecrafter, versus if we attacked with the Dragon, yes, we would put them on a 2-turn clock, but they would have had a lot of removal to get rid of the Furnace, or I'm sorry, the Gladiator. And best case scenario, we'd have to chump block the 5, right? More or less. So I think that's what I did. I don't remember what I drew, but this was definitely a decision point here, because I think there was a lot of things to consider, and I don't think you're wrong. I think attacking with the 5/6 is very sound, because you are forcing them to literally have an answer in one turn. But I don't know. I think I was a little worried about being at 9 as well. We ended up winning this game because they had no answer to our Dragon. But I want to say the way it played out was I attacked with the Gladiator and they just blocked the Furnace, and then they didn't attack with their Bladecrafter because they didn't want to lose it to the Dragon. And so we just end up winning with the Dragon anyways. I think we drew like 2 units or something like that. But yeah,
so you both basically just got one extra draw out of the whole deal.
Yeah.
By attacking with the 3/3 instead of the 5/6.
Yeah. So it yeah, pretty much. But that was my reason behind it. But once again, I think both lines are correct. So yeah, let us know in the comments down below, or message us on Discord, or tweet at us what you would have done here. I think you guys are correct, though. I think definitely not doing anything this turn is just bad, because we're already in the back foot. And so I think being proactive is definitely a step in the right direction, especially with our opponent essentially being up on us 4 cards. One of them could have been power. That still puts them up 4 cards, because they're going to draw a card at the beginning of their turn. So, yeah.
Maybe their hand looks just as bad as yours, though.
Unlucky.
It could happen.
Yeah. Sweet. All right. Well, that's our what's the play. Like I said, not the most complex board, but there are some different lines to consider. I think it was worth putting that out there for sure, because there is a time where you want to give your opponent as few draws as possible, but when you're really close to dying, like, man, it's a fine line, especially going up against Destruction, because they have just so many tools. Ambition is probably the one that has the most tools to push through damage, right? Because Time really doesn't have a way to push extra damage, but okay. All right, that's going to do it for our What's the Play. So let's go into our Constructed Corner, and this one is brought to you yet again by Sizzle Steam. He's back at it again, brewing some more Gauntlet, and this time talking about the card that we just talked about and spoiled, which is Spire of Shadows. So let me break down the deck for you guys. There is going to be a link to the deck on Eternal Warcry in the description down below. But break it down for you very quickly. 3 Defiance, 4 Initiate of the Sands, 3 Corendon Cargo, 1 Xenon Lifespeaker, 4 Defile, 2 Devour, 2 Vara's Favor, 4 Aurelian Merchant, 2 Cast in the Shadow, 4 Hidden Road Smuggler, 4 Corendon Merchant, 1 Kirin Ascendant, 4 Crown Watch Press Gang, 4 Katra the Devoted, 4 Memory Dredger, 3 Colony Matron, 1 Lumen Defender, 1 Justice, 4 Shadow, 2 Time, 4 Amber Waystone, 2 Crown Watch Standards, 4 Seat of Mystery, 4 Seat of Progress, 4 Seat of Vengeance. And then the market has the name state card that we talked about, Spire of Shadows, Banish, Sword of Unity, Ermot's Machinations, and Xenon Temple. So once again, we don't have to explain the powerhouse of Memory Dredger in Gauntlet. This is a Gauntlet deck, but actually, as we were talking about it, someone in Discord, I don't remember who, actually said that they came across it in Ladder and it beat them. So there's definitely some synergy here. The premise of the deck, has removal, all this other stuff, is, long story short, as you noticed, there's multiple ways to go into your market to guarantee your ability to pull off a Spire of Shadow or Spire Shadows as soon as possible. Once you do that, it's going to turn things like, for example, your Colony Matron and your Lumen Defenders, it's going to swap their attack with their casting costs, so they're now going to become 5/5s for 1. This also allows you to then tutor them up using the summon ability from Crown Watch Press Gang. Revenge, summon, draw a 1-cost unit of your choice from your deck. So you play your merchant, whichever one of the 12 that you have, grab the spires, play it, And then once you play your Crown Watch Press Gang, it will allow you to go grab a Colony Matron and play it for 1. So you have a 5/5 flyer that spits out 1/1 life stealers for 1. This obviously synergizes with Memory Treasure, being able to bring those back because now they only cost 1. And of course, all those Vampire Bats synergize with Katra, making your team bigger and bigger. And that's the premise of the deck, honestly. And I gotta say, it's a lot of fun. I played it. It's able to come back from defeat pretty easily once you get a Matron or 2 on the board. Lumen Defender blocks very great and obviously gains you some life as well. So yeah, it's a fun, very fun deck. But obviously, going the full 12 merchants to guarantee you can get that Spire on 4 is pretty big. But yeah, nothing much to explain about the deck. Other than that, that's pretty much the premise of it. I don't know if you guys have anything to add, but it is fun. And of course, shout out once again to Sizzle Steam for that.
Yeah, this is cool. Good deck.
Sizzle's Shadow Mart, and I quote, "The greatest gauntlet deck ever created, period." So if you want a good gauntlet deck, I quote Sizzle off Discord right there.
Yep.
Yeah, give this one a whirl. It's pretty fun. I've tried it myself.
It's the first line of text in his description for the deck on Warcry as well.
Yeah, I appreciate his shout out to Army of Darkness with Shop Shadow Smart or Shadow Mart.
Yeah,
Shadow
true.
Mart. Yeah.
Sizzle is a gauntlet master though. Like
yeah,
he
definitely
very very high quality gauntlet decks. This one looks like both fun and powerful, and makes great use of one of the cards we just talked about, which is extra cool. So excited to give this one a try.
Yeah, and it's pretty easy to stake a claim like that, right? When you're going up against Gauntlet, like if it wins, 10 gauntlets in a row or whatever, it's pretty easy to be like, yep, best deck ever. Versus if you try to say that about ladder, it's like, Okay.
Yeah.
So that is our Constricted Corner for this week. Wishing everyone good luck in the, what is it called? The Invitational this weekend? What is it, John?
I don't remember what it's called, but yes, it is.
It's the
something
spring,
like that.
the Spring Expedition Invitational, right?
There you go. Yeah, they're doing coverage actually for this and the one next weekend as well on Sundays.
Exciting.
On Twitch.
Yeah,
So good luck out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, John, both you and I are going to be competing in it, so hopefully we will be high-fiving each other on Sunday morning.
I will be
I hope so.
rooting you on.
Awesome.
Thanks.
All right, that's going to do it. So let's go into our final segment, which is our Twitch question of the week. This one comes from Dizzy Sick. Thank you, Dizzy, so much for cashing in those midichlorians and asking this awesome question, actually. Do you believe in having a constructed mentality is helpful when drafting, or more of a hindrance? So let's start off with you, Alex. What do you think?
Also, like, my first reaction is that it can be a hindrance, because constructed typically is just like the best cards out of the set. Like, for example, this last set that we're drafting right now has like maybe 200-ish cards that are in the packs, in the first pack, in that set, and like maybe 10 of those cards are used in constructed. So it's like, if you go into the draft and just trying to look for the cards that are good, like, for example, the one that comes to mind for me is Carver. Now, in constructed, that card can be broken in the right deck, but in limited, it, like, you really need to synergize and really have to work to make that card good. Like, it's in a strictly go wide deck that you can sacrifice units to. Like, it shines in the constructed deck that it's in. So a lot of times people think, oh, this card is good because it's in my, Stone Scar Throne deck or whatever. But in limited, it's not as good. So I think my gut reaction would be to say that it can be a hindrance if you're not careful, I guess.
Yeah, I think you're correct. I lean more towards hindrance. Because you're setting up these cards in the best case scenario. So your deck is synergized with these cards. Plus the field is a lot different, right? Certain cards, when you know what you're going up against, or you're going to have the consistency of your opponents. Like, for example, let's say you have a card that is fantastic against flyers and you expect like a very heavy dragon meta, right? That card's going to be busted. Now, granted, that will cross over into limited right now because there is a flyers deck. But if there isn't, for example, ensnare, right? Having an ensnare in your market is almost always going to have a decent target. Not now, but we go back to the last tournament where dragons were prevalent. There was going to be a good chance, like people were main decking edicts, right? That's not quite the case in limited, and so like you said, it can give you kind of a misevaluation of specific cards. But the upside to that is the fact that you're able to play more with cards. So for people that exclusively draft, there's a chance that you could see a legendary or rare and have no idea whether it's good or not. Versus if you were able to play it in constructed, you have at least somewhat of an idea of its power level. But I do agree. I think limited is a completely different animal, and you have to look at cards differently, because cards that you thought might be bad are actually going to be pretty decent limited, and some cards that you thought were good were going to be bad. I think it's its own specific format, and because of that, I lean a little more towards the hindrance side. Yeah, and then resources management as well, right? When you know that you're going to have 12 removal spells in your deck, you could be a little more forthcoming with them, versus when you only have 1 or 2 removal spells in your deck, you have to understand that you have to really hold on and can't just fire it off at the first good target you see. John?
So yeah, I'll keep it a little short and sweet. Like, having constructed experience, extremely helpful when drafting. The formats are, by constructed, I'm specifically talking about Expedition here in our Eternal ecosystem, because it is identical to the draft format as far as the card pool. So it will help you very much in just already knowing good tricks and fast spells and things to look out for. So that is like directly beneficial. But your question about having a constructed mentality, no, I think that is way more of a hindrance for all the reasons you guys mentioned. Yeah, straight up. You want to have a draft, a totally open mind. You want to get all those preconceived notions about a lot of these cards out of the way and be open to cards that you think are normally quite bad, because they can be really good in draft, and vice versa.
Another thing to consider real quickly as well is just power bases, right? It's pretty easy to kind of ignore power bases in constructed, because you're just going to be able to make the perfect power base every time. Versus in limited, you have to take that into consideration, both when you're taking picks for fixing as well as picks for units. Like, hey, that triple influence card is my splash color, so I don't think I could play it. Things like that.
Yeah. Great question, Dizzy. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dizzy. Really appreciate that. And that will do it, guys. So let's go ahead and go into our closing statements. Once again, if you too want to ask a question to be answered on the show, simply tune in to us on twitch.tv/Jedi_EJ every Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And you can cash in your midichlorians, which are absolutely free. You get them for just watching the channel, to have your question answered on the show. If you can't catch us live, you're more than welcome to see our content on YouTube. Just search up EternalJourney or type in EternalJourney on YouTube.com. And you can also hit us up 24 hours a day. We might not respond right away, but we have a fantastic community that we're building, and it's continuing to grow thanks to great people in the Discord, link down below, where, yeah, you can talk about things IRL, you can talk about things Eternal, both limited and constructed. We all help each other get better at this game that we love, and plenty of people are using the co-op draft channels and stuff like that, discussing picks and deck building. So definitely tune into that. And then, of course, you can catch these great guys in all of those various platforms along with me, because they're absolutely amazing and I'm forcing them to do it. Aha. So, any closing statements from Alex?
No, just good luck this weekend, Team EJ and everyone else listening on the Spring Invitational. Good luck.
John?
No, that was a good show. I'm so excited to brew with this new set.
No kidding. Me too. All right, guys, let's get to it for this one. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, happy gaming.
Bye.
Good luck with your draft cues, everyone.